Chapter 1451 Hail Gustavo Alliance. As the spacecraft continued its journey through the cosmos, the atmosphere inside was a mixture of relief and tension. The recent victory over the gargantuan hand was still fresh, yet Falco's words lingered in the air, casting a shadow over the celebration. "I don't feel like I did much," Falco remarked, his voice tinged with a hint of resignation. "Estral is just too powerful." His statement hung in the air, puzzling the crew. Rhea, always quick to probe deeper into matters, turned towards Falco as his brow furrowed in confusion. "Estral? Who is that?" he asked, sounding perplexed. Falco looked around, realizing that they still hadn't grasped what lay beyond. "Estral is the second most powerful among the ancient executioners," he explained, his voice steady, trying to provide clarity, yet aware of the enormity of the information he was disclosing. His revelation did not alleviate the confusion. If anything, it deepened it. All except Gustav and Endrik seemed lost in the web of confusion. Endrik, sensing the growing bewilderment, decided to elucidate. "By now, you all should know that the premonitions are not mere anomalies. They are, in fact, manifestations, body parts of the 5 ancient executioners," he said, his voice firm, trying to instill some sense of understanding. The room fell into a heavy silence as the crew digested the information. Gustav, who had been silent, finally spoke, turning to Falco with a serious expression. "What more do you know, Falco?" Falco took a deep breath, the weight of his heritage and knowledge evident in his demeanor. "The reason my father made me, it's beyond just wanting to have another offspring," he began, his voice low. Gustav felt he was finally about to hear what the system had been hiding from him the entire time. Earth, the once vibrant cityscape of Neo-Kyo, had transformed into a battleground, its architecture marred by the ravages of conflict. Neon lights flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows across streets littered with debris. Hover cars lay overturned, their sleek designs punctuated by bolts of energy, while digital billboards streamed chaotic scenes of the ongoing battle below. The air was thick with the smell of ionized energy and smoke. In the midst of the urban chaos, 2 groups clashed with devastating ferocity. One group, donned in MBO uniforms, wielded their bloodline abilities, manifesting glowing weapons, firing waves of kinetic energy, and causing explosions based on their specific bloodlines. They faced opponents clad in weird robe-like uniforms, complete with masks that gave them an almost ritualistic appearance. The adversaries were not mere fighters. They wielded supernatural abilities that seemed to warp the fabric of reality around them. The battle was intense, with the MBO officers finding themselves increasingly pressed. Their numbers dwindled under the relentless assault of the robed figures, whose mysterious powers allowed them to manipulate elemental forces, casting bolts of lightning and summoning ethereal fire from the air. The MBO officers, despite their training and powerful abilities, were being overwhelmed and pushed back by the frightening intensity of their foes. As the situation grew dire, the last standing MBO officer, a young man named Lieutenant Haruto, found himself cornered. The remnants of his squad lay scattered around him, and he braced for a final stand. Just as the robed figures closed in, preparing to deliver the coup de grace, a dramatic shift occurred. From the sky descended a figure like a meteor, her arrival heralded by a purplish beam of energy that erupted from the large eyeball on her forehead. The beam swept across the battlefield with devastating force, creating a shockwave that sent the robed assailants flying, their forms tumbling through the air like leaves in a storm. The battlefield fell silent for a moment, all eyes turning to the new arrival. She landed gracefully amid the ruins, her azure hair flowing in pigtail waves. Her face, marked by pale red lips and a strikingly beautiful visage, bore an expression of calm determination. The purplish energy that surrounded her caused the air around them to thrum with power, an aura of might that seemed to stabilize the chaotic energies around her. "Young Miss Elevra," Haruto exclaimed, relief flooding his voice as hope was rekindled in his eyes. He recognized her immediately, not only as a fellow officer of the MBO, but as a prodigy within their ranks, famed for her formidable powers. Elevra nodded at him, her gaze sweeping the area with tactical precision. "Help people get to safety. Haruto," she commanded, her voice resonant and authoritative. "I'll handle them." Haruto hesitated for a moment, torn between his duty and the instinct to fight alongside her, but recognizing the disparity in their power and the strategic sense in her command, he nodded, sprinting away to find cover and rally any other survivors. As Elevra stepped forward, the remaining robed figures regrouped, their supernatural abilities flaring up once more. They unleashed a barrage of ethereal assaults towards her, from spectral flames to shards of ice conjured from thin air. Elevra responded with a display of her own power. The eyeball on her forehead glowed with an intense purplish light, amplifying the energy around her. With a swift motion, she drew the energy into a condensed orb, then released it in a spectacular explosion of light and power, neutralizing the incoming attacks with precision. As the robed figures regrouped and launched a renewed assault, Elevra's azure eyes narrowed, and the large eyeball on her forehead began to glow ominously. The air around her crackled with energy, the atmosphere thick with the scent of ozone and the sharp tang of fear emanating from her foes. The first to strike were two who combined their mystical forces, hurling a volley of dark energy spears toward her. With a slight tilt of her head, Elevra focused her gaze through the third eye, and beams of light shot forth, intersecting the spears. Under her manipulative gaze, the spears shrank into harmless dust that fluttered to the ground like ash. Emboldened by her display of power, Elevra advanced. Her movements were a blur, like a specter of vengeance in the night. Another assailant attempted to ensnare her, with glowing chains conjured from thin air, designed to bind and strangle its targets. Elevra, with a flick of her wrist, directed a beam from her forehead. The chains not only halted but reversed in size, becoming so small they were rendered ineffective, clattering uselessly to the ground. The battle escalated quickly as Elevra tapped into the darker aspects of her power. Her third eye glowed with a deep, malevolent purple, and with a piercing gaze, she unleashed a devastating dark beam. This beam, a concentrated burst of destructive energy, cut through the battlefield like a scythe through wheat. Buildings, vehicles, and unfortunate assailants in its path were reduced to atoms, obliterated without a trace, leaving behind a swath of destruction. As she wove through her enemies, her physical prowess was undeniable. She moved with an otherworldly grace, delivering precise and ruthless strikes. Bam, bam. Each motion was fluid, yet each impact was brutally effective, rendering her foes incapacitated or lifeless in mere moments. Blood spattered across the dented pavements as her fist pierced through the chest of another assailant, causing his innards to spill like soggy noodles. The robed figures, though numerous and armed with supernatural abilities, found themselves outmatched by Elevra's ferocity and raw power. One by one, they fell, their numbers dwindling rapidly under her relentless assault. "Yeah, I'm in one now. Don't worry, I'm almost done with them." "I couldn't miss your call, E. No, you're not distracting me." She seemed to be in a call as she took off the head of yet another masked robbed assailant. "Come on, don't hang up." "All right then. You can call me later. I'll tidy things up here in a bit." The air was filled with the sounds of battle, the clash of energies and the cries of the fallen, but Elevra seemed to be in her own world as she dealt with them without breaking much of a sweat. As the dust settled, only one of the robed assailants remained. The survivor, bloodied and battered, stood trembling before Elevra, who approached with slow, deliberate steps. Her third eye ceased its glow. The battlefield around her eerily quiet except for the soft whir of distant sirens and the crackling of fires that consumed what remained of the surrounding structures. Alevra paused before the last assailant, her expression inscrutable. "Tell me, who are you guys? Who sent you lots?" she inquired. The assailant, shaking in fear, tried to stab herself with her sinuous limbs while yelling with a crazed look, "Hail Gustavo Alliance!" Alevra caught her before she could kill herself. "You're coming with me." She grabbed her and instantly flew off into the distance. My father, the Lord of the Dark Plane, needed a way to puncture even the tiniest hole in a seal, a cosmic seal that binds an ancient power we can scarcely comprehend. That seal is in place to protect weaker planes like ours. Everyone listened as Falco narrated. The seal was so strong, so impenetrable, that not even the might of the ancient executioners could break it on their own. My birth, my very existence, was the key to creating the first breach. Chapter 1452 change in primary objective. The seal was so strong, so impenetrable, that not even the might of the ancient executioners could break it on their own. My birth, my very existence, was the key to creating the first breach. Rhea, always quick to grasp the implications, leaned forward. "So, your existence alone weakened the seal? But how does that relate to the premonitions we've been encountering?" Falco sighed, the weight of his destiny apparent in his posture. The premonitions, they are not random cosmic events. They are rituals, each carefully planned and executed to weaken the seal further. And when the fifth premonition appears, the seal will be completely destroyed. Eldris, who was starting to understand the situation, interjected, "You're saying that the appearances of these ancient executioners' body parts during the premonitions are sacrifices?" Falco nodded grimly. "Exactly. Each part of the executioners that manifests and is then sacrificed contributes to the weakening of the seal. Those are body parts that will be lost to them forever, but that is a testament to the seal's strength, considering that the ancient executioners are among the second most powerful beings within my father's realm." The silence within the spacecraft was palpable, but it only lasted for a few seconds as Falco cut through the silence with the remaining part of his tale. So much so that they haven't been conscious in hundreds of thousands of years because they serve only one purpose. The revelation stirred a mix of horror and fascination among the crew. The notion that such powerful entities were being used as mere tools in a larger scheme was unsettling. Rhea, trying to understand the broader implications, asked, "What happens if the seal is broken completely? What does your father hope to achieve?" Falco looked at each of them, his gaze lingering as if measuring the impact of his next words. "If the seal breaks, it will release something bound since the dawn of this universe's memory, something my father believes should not have been sealed away. Or should I say someone?" He turned to face Gustav. "Someone you specifically sealed away." "What? Gustav? How could Gustav have sealed someone away from so long ago?" Rhea and Eldris voiced out their confusion. "Because he was there. He is the outworldly. I finally understand what the outworldly is, what the title entails. Gustav, do you even know who you are?" "I can take a wild guess from everything you've mentioned, but even I don't believe it myself." Gustav shook his head slightly. "He is telling the truth, though. That is why you play a key part in stopping this," Endrick voiced from the side. "So, what exactly happens when the seal is gone?" Rhea questioned again. "The Overseer will return. All beings of the higher planes will have a foothold in ours again, and believe me, it isn't a sight you want to live to see." Falco shook his head. "Then we must make sure the final premonition doesn't happen. We can't allow this seal to break." Gustav responded. Falco's expression softened, appreciating Gustav's resolve. "I thought you might say that, and I'm with you. While I was born to facilitate my father's plans, my journey with you all, it has shown me a different path, one that I choose to follow, standing against the darkness my father seeks to unleash. Ealdris, moved by Falco's declaration, placed a supportive hand on his shoulder. Then it settled. Well, stand together, as we always have. And Falco, we're not just fighting beside you out of duty, but out of belief in you, in the choice you've made to defy what was written for you. That's where you're wrong, Endrick interjected, his voice steady and sure. The destruction of Humbad is a widely accepted fact, but it's a facade, a cover-up for much deeper truths hidden by the Slarkovs themselves. Gustav nodded at Endrick's clarification, appreciating the support. Exactly. And within Humbad, in what is known as Dimension 6, lies something crucial for handling our current predicament with the seal. We must locate it. The revelation that Humbad still existed, possibly holding the keys to the answers they desperately needed, was beyond their comprehension. The story of Planet Humbad was one that had been told since forever to the masses on Earth. They had grown up with it, and so had their fathers and their fathers' fathers. It was hard to swallow that it had been a generational lie, but it slowly began to sink in. But what about Angie? She's still trapped within the dark plane. Do we give up on rescuing her? Rhea questioned with a mix of worry and frustration. I haven't forgotten about Angie. I more than anyone want to rescue her. But consider this. If they've kept her alive all this time, they must still need her. That means she's relatively safe for now. Our main focus must shift to finding Humbad. It might be our best chance to save her, and everyone else. Falco, absorbing the strategy laid out by Gustav, added his perspective. Gustav is right. Angie has some kind of usefulness to my father, and that is more so now than ever since he can't control me. If Gustav says finding Humbad could help us, then I trust his judgment. Ealdris chimed in at that moment. The question remains, how do we find a planet that seemed to have vanished from existence? Where do we even begin? Gustav responded by initiating a projection that filled the room with data, a visual symphony of numbers, symbols, and cryptic words, interspersed with images showing an ashy trail streaking across space. The key to finding Humbad lies in deciphering this, Gustav explained, his finger tracing the lines of data as they floated holographically in midair. He paused at two recurring terms that seemed to anchor the chaos of information: stagnant siderous void and premonition. Gustav continued. The stagnant siderous void is where I believe Planet Humbad is. The problem is that according to what I know, it also is a place that doesn't exist in any known location within the universe. So what of the premonition? Are they linked with the 5 premonitions? Ealdris inquired. I don't think so. I think this premonition represents something else. Representation for the location or key to accessing the stagnant siderous void. Meanwhile, back on Earth, in a facility orbiting high above the planet's surface, a different scene unfolded. A floating prison, specifically designed for holding aliens, was a marvel of modern technology. Its exterior was a composite of dark metals and energy fields, rotating slowly with the Earth's orbit, its presence a silent sentinel in the cold vacuum of space. Inside, the environment was starkly minimalist, functional to its core. The cells were designed not with bars, but with energy fields humming with a low, almost imperceptible buzz. At the center of one such cell floated a being, its form nebulous and shifting, contained by the force of the high-tech restraints. A lever stood outside the energy field, her figure bathed in the soft blue light that emanated from the cell's containment system. Her hair fluttered as her commanding presence contrasted sharply with the dim, utilitarian surroundings. Who is the leader of the Gustavo Alliance, and where is their base located? Elevra asked, her voice firm and devoid of any warmth. It was a question she had posed several times, each iteration as pointed as the last. The being inside the cell, its form coalescing into a more humanoid appearance, replied with a tone that was both weary and defiant. The answer remains the same as it has. It's Gustav. He leads and they follow. Elevra's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of irritation passing over her features. I know that Gustav has nothing to do with this. Tell me the truth. Who pulls the strings? She countered smoothly. Chapter 1453, You're delusional. Everything that happens is the will of our Lord God, Gustav. Don't be a misguided sapiens. Join the cause of our Lord, the being voiced once more like a fanatic. If you spit one more bullshit again, I will obliterate you, Elevra threatened. The being's form shimmered, its fear palpable even through the containment field. You think you are powerful, but your abilities are nothing but mere flickers of shadows compared to our God. Gustav, the shield behind which the true powers convene. Elevra stepped closer to the field, her presence imposing. Your cooperation is your only path to lesser confinement. Help us, and we can help you. Who is behind this? Our Lord Gustav. The being sounded like a brainwashed fanatic. Elevra fixed her intense gaze upon the nebulous form of the imprisoned being. This is getting repetitive. Tell me the truth. Who is behind the Gustavo alliance? She demanded, her voice echoing slightly off the smooth walls, imbued with an authority that brooked no defiance. The being inside the cell, its form shimmering with a yellow light, replied with a fervor that bordered on fanaticism. Lord Gustav is our God, our personal savior. There is no behind, for he is the forefront, the guiding light of our mission. Elevra's eyes narrowed, her patience wearing thin. Spare me your zealotry. I need names and structures. Who orchestrates the moves? Does Gustav even know of the existence of you lots? The being seemed to curl within itself, a flicker of hesitation passing through its ethereal form. You seek shadows in a well-lit room. Gustav is the epitome, the culmination of our faith and actions. We are his to command, his to deploy as he sees fit on the chessboard of this universe. Unsatisfied with the circular answers, Elevra shifted tactics. Then tell me about your aims for attacking Earth. What was the objective? We were to bring Earth under our dominion, as we have done with other planets. The being responded, its voice a mixture of pride and regret. But we underestimated Earth's strength. Our unit thought ourselves too mighty, even though we were warned. It matters not. Where we have failed, others will succeed. They shall carry out the grand design. Elevra pressed on, her tone sharpening like a blade. And what is this grand design? What is the end game of your so-called Gustavo alliance? The room tensed as the being paused, its brightness dimming as if drawing in energy for a significant revelation. The end game, it began, its voice now a hollow echo of its former vigor, is to support our Lord and Savior Gustav in his ultimate mission to bring an end to the existence of the universe. The words hung heavy in the air, charged with the magnitude of their implications. Elevra felt a chill run down her spine as Gustav's face flashed in her mind. To end the universe, she repeated, disbelief threading through her words. Gustav would never do that. These fools must have higher-ups that pursue such a goal. Until we resolve the current situation, maybe you could consider going after them, E suggested. Sigh, I don't know. We really don't have much time left, Gustav answered. The transmission continued, the weight of the universe's eyes on them growing heavier by the moment. Shifted his attention to Falco, who had been quiet in the background. And Falco, added, his tone softening, your earthly father misses you. Any plans of coming to say hi soon? Seemed to have already been briefed on everything that had transpired, as he spoke with a knowing tone. I miss him too, but, Falco replied, his voice tinged with a mix of nostalgia and determination. This takes priority at the moment. Maybe you could help me send a message. Tell him I'm fine, he added. Smiled slightly, a brief respite from the dire news he had delivered. I will. Stay safe. all of you, I will try my best to stabilize things over here. The holographic image flickered as the transmission prepared to end. Keep us updated, E.E., Gustav said firmly. E.E. nodded before the transmission ended. After the transmission ended, Gustav went back to facing the display of data relating to the warp demolator and stagnant Siderus void. Endrick turned to Gustav with a look of earnest inquiry. You've been poring over this data in the last few days. What have you uncovered? Any insights that could help us navigate to Humbad? The rest leaned in, anticipation hanging palpable in the air. They all respected Gustav's intellect, which had proven on countless occasions to be second to none. His ability to discern patterns and meanings where others saw only chaos was almost legendary. Gustav, who had been staring intently at the holographic symbols and equations, finally turned to face them. His expression was one of cautious intrigue, hinting at the depth of his discoveries. I have a multitude of theories, he began slowly, his voice measured, but there is one that resonates the most, perhaps the most radical. The crew shifted, their interest piqued, as they prepared to delve into one of Gustav's quintessential revelations. Gustav continued, remember I mentioned that the stagnant Siderus void is not any known place within the universe? But what if it doesn't exist yet? A murmur of surprise and skepticism ran through the group, with Falco furrowing his brows in confusion. Doesn't exist yet? How? Gustav replied by pointing back to the display, where the symbol for premonition floated next to the term stagnant Siderus void. We've been interpreting premonition as a warning or a vision of impending events. But what if in this context, it doesn't just mean foresight? What if it's actually a clue indicating the future? Eldris, trying to keep up, chimed in. Are you saying that the stagnant Siderus void is a place that doesn't exist yet but will exist in the future? Chapter 1454, Time Travel. Gustav nodded, his eyes alight with the thrill of theoretical discovery. Exactly. This data isn't just spatial. It's temporal. The stagnant Siderus void isn't a location that's hidden or difficult to locate. It has not been formed yet. We haven't gotten to the timeline in which an event, a phenomenon, will create the stagnant Siderus void. Endrick leaned forward with an apprehensive tone. So, we are essentially chasing a shadow from the future. How do we even begin to approach this? Falco voiced in confusion. Gustav rubbed his chin thoughtfully, contemplating the complexities of their mission. If my theory holds, then our path isn't through space but through time. Understanding the conditions under which the void will come to exist, and finding a way to either witness or interact with its formation. Eldris asked the inevitable question, how do we know what time it is? What if it is to come into existence after the fifth premonition? That's the problem, Gustav voiced in response. The only other method would be time travel, Endrick pointed out. But how do we navigate time? Are we to find some sort of temporal gateway or device? Rhea questioned. Time travel is a true myth. No one can really do it, and it is forbidden to conduct research related to such, if I recall clearly. Eldris mumbled with a slightly distressed look. Then what do we do? Rhea questioned while everyone turned to face Gustav once more. There's only one chance I think we have at getting to the stagnant Siderus void, or rather since I don't intend to put you all in harm's way. The weight of Gustav's words hung heavily as the holographic projector displayed the swirling, ashy energy trail. If I can predict where it will appear next, I can use it to get there. Actually shouldn't be much of a challenge, because I've done it before. Endrick and Eldris exchanged a look of skepticism, both well aware of the dangers such a plan entailed. Are you certain about this, big brother? Endrick asked, his tone laced with concern. Even if you do pinpoint the next emergence of a warp demolator, do you know if your body can withstand such a powerful temporal wave? We're talking about forces that could potentially rip you to shreds or disintegrate you completely. Eldris nodded in agreement, his expression grim. It's extremely dangerous, Gustav. The Slarkovs must have fled because they somehow predicted the coming of the warp demolator and knew they wouldn't survive. Is your body as sturdy as an entire planet? Even if it is, Planet Humbad can't be 100% intact. There's no precedent for this kind of physical exposure. Gustav met their worried looks with a resolute gaze. He agrees that the armor is essential for your survival through the demolator. It will protect you from the worst of the temporal distortions and enhance your physical capabilities. Gustav and Endrik delved into a crucial discussion about the sacred armor's capabilities and limitations. Gustav, arms crossed, addressed Endrik with a mix of concern and curiosity. Endrik, remember, the sacred armor is renowned for its physical defense capabilities. We're talking about riding the warp demolator, a phenomenon that transcends mere physicality. I know the lore suggests that the armor is impervious to physical damage, and that's true. It offers unparalleled physical protection. However, it's not just a suit of armor. It's imbued with ancient energies capable of warding off forces of physicality. You would have known if you could touch it at the moment, since you're becoming unbound. Gustav raised an eyebrow, skeptical yet intrigued by Endrik's confidence. So, you're saying it has other protective measures? Endrik tapped on the hologram, bringing up layers of arcane symbols and protective wards that lined the interior of the armor. See here, he pointed, these inscriptions aren't just for show. Each one is crafted to absorb and dissipate a range of energies. Indeed, its efficacy against non-physical threats isn't 100%, but it's designed to adapt to its wearer's needs, especially against mystical and temporal threats. Gustav, his expression softening from skepticism to consideration, continued to probe. And you're sure this adaptation will extend to something as volatile as the warp demolator? There's an inherent risk, yes, but the armor is our best bet. Your body will have to handle the rest. You were going to do it without the armor before anyways. Endrik rubbed his temple in frustration. Gustav paused, processing the information, then nodded slowly. All right, then I'll use it. Endrik, relieved to have Gustav's buy-in, added a crucial detail. It'll keep the armor secured in the dimension where Husarius and I have sealed it until you're ready to embark. Taking it out prematurely would put a massive target on our backs. Every intergalactic marauder and treasure hunter would come after us. Gustav's nod was grave and understanding. Makes sense, until the last possible moment then. On Earth, shrouded in a perpetual veil of thick, silver fog, lay an isolated island, inaccessible to most Earthlings. The island, with its tall infrastructures, rose starkly against the view of a restless sea that guarded its mysteries well. The architecture was a seamless blend of nature and technology, towering structures with reflective surfaces standing alongside verdant, genetically engineered gardens that climbed skywards, neon lights cut through the fog, casting a surreal glow that reflected off the hypermodern buildings. The crown jewel of the urban marvel was a vast, imposing structure known as the Citadel. It was not only the largest and most luxurious building on the island, but also the center of power for its ruling dynasty. The Citadel, with its sweeping arcs and towering spires, exuded lavishness. Its walls, lined with energy-efficient panels, illuminated the interiors, bathing expansive halls in a gentle, ambient light that highlighted intricate designs inspired by both past civilizations and speculative futures. Inside the Citadel, in the grandest hall, a young man is seated on a throne that seems as much a piece of art as a seat of power. The throne, crafted from rare metals and hoverstone, floated slightly above the ground. The young man had the poised bearing of a seasoned leader despite his youth. His black dreadlocks were tied back neatly, accentuating sharp, tanned features that carried the weight of his responsibilities. Chapter 1455 Space Wreckage. The young man had the poised bearing of a seasoned leader despite his youth. His black dreadlocks were tied back neatly, accentuating sharp, tanned features that carried the weight of his responsibilities. He was clad in a simple yet elegant robe that did not overshadow the three-headed dragon emblem embroidered in silver thread on his chest, a symbol of his family's heraldry and their fierce protectiveness over their domain. Around him, guards in pristine white robes stand at attention. Their own robes bear the same three-headed dragon on the back, a symbol that is both a promise and a warning to all who might dare to challenge their family's rule. At this moment, a figure dressed in the muted grays of a civilian administrator stands before Stark, delivering a report with a digital tablet in hand. The hall echoes softly with the rhythmic, unobtrusive sound of his voice. Family Head Stark, the trade negotiations with the Sled Central have concluded successfully. Additionally, the new energy harnessing project has surpassed all projected efficiency metrics. Stark nods appreciatively, his eyes scanning a live data feed that plays out across a holographic display beside the throne. Excellent. Ensure that the surplus energy is redirected into expanding our agricultural domes. We'll need the extra provisions if we're to support our growing population. Before the advisor could respond, another figure entered the hall. This man, older and with the distinguished air of someone born to power, approaches the throne with a respectful bow. Family Head Stark, he greets with a warmth that belies the formality of the setting. Stark recognizes him instantly as one of his uncles, a trusted member of the council. Uncle Matthias, what brings you here at this hour? Stark inquires, his tone mixing familial warmth with the crispness of his official role. Matthias' face is grave, his eyes holding a flicker of urgency as he straightens to address Stark. The time has arrived, he says cryptically, his voice low but firm. Stark's expression shifts subtly, a flicker of understanding passing through his sharp gaze. You're sure? Yes, the signs have aligned, just as the prophecy foretold. We must prepare to use it now, Matthias responds, his tone now laced with an intensity that draws a deeper, more serious line to Stark's already commanding presence. Stark stood to his feet, his figure casting a long shadow across the marble floors, embellished with the etchings of their ancestral lineage. Gather the council and call back our envoys from the mainland. If what you say is true, we'll need to perform the ritual now. As you command, Family Head, Matthias replied, bowing once more before turning to carry out the orders. Upon Matthias' departure, Stark gazes into the sprawling cityscape. He can see the entirety of the island from his position despite being inside of this building. Gustav, you will have to forgive me, Stark mumbled before returning to his seat. As their spacecraft thrummed through the cosmic void, its course set towards a location predicted to be the next appearance of the warp demolator, the atmosphere among them had settled into a routine of anticipation mixed with diligent preparation. The control room, usually a hub of activity, now operated with a quiet efficiency, the vast stretches of space offering a display of tranquil stars and nebulae that seemed almost static in their slow drift past the viewports. Gustav had found himself a quiet corner in the observation deck, a space with a panoramic view of the star-studded blackness. Here he sat cross-legged, his eyes closed and his breathing measured. The meditation was deep, aimed at channeling his bloodline. Ealdris, checking on the navigational charts, walked over to where Endrick was. He stood for a moment, observing before speaking. How are you feeling about the warp demolator? Any concerns about the approach? Not really, but why do you ask? Endrick voiced in slight confusion. Gustav has mentioned on multiple occasions that you are the time candidate. I don't exactly know what that means, but I just get the feeling you'll be able to tell if things weren't right. Ealdris answered with a concerned tone. You're half right. It doesn't exactly work the way you think. If I truly wanted to know if something could go wrong, I would consult the fates. The last time I did that, a flashback of destruction played in Endrick's mind as his face scrunched in guilt. It didn't go so well, but I believe we'll be fine. Preparations are being made. We have a solid month before the demolator makes its appearance. We'll reach the predicted location in 2 weeks, which gives us another 2 to prepare or consider other options if needed. 2 weeks to get there, 2 more to wait. It's ample time to ensure we're not walking into this blindly. Eldris agreed with Endrick's thoughts. As Eldris and Endrick pored over the intricacies of their route to intercept the warp demolator, a sudden series of urgent beeps resonated through the spacecraft's control room, slicing through their discussion like a sharp blade. The red flashing lights of the proximity alert bathed the room in an ominous glow, reflecting off the metallic surfaces and illuminating the concerned faces of the crew. "What's happening?" Eldris exclaimed, rushing to the main console to scan the data rapidly scrolling across the screen. Endrick, equally alarmed, joined him, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the readouts. Proximity alerts aren't supposed to go off like this unless— his words trailed off as Gustav emerged from his meditation chamber, drawn by the commotion. His expression was one of calm control, but the urgency of the situation was not lost on him. "What have we encountered?" he asked, his voice steady, cutting through the tension. Endrick manipulated the controls, bringing up an external visual feed on the main display. The sight that greeted them was both macabre and startling. "It's not what, but who," he said grimly. The screen showed a cluster of objects floating in space ahead of them, objects that, upon closer inspection, resolved into humanoid and alien shapes. Corpses, dozens of them, drifted lifelessly through the void, their faces frozen in expressions of terror and despair. Each wore a black and white uniform, now torn and soiled with the marks of violent deaths. The crew stared in horrified silence, the reality of the scene before them sinking in slowly. As the spacecraft edged closer, another structure came into view, a battered space structure, pockmarked with holes and floating listlessly. It was clear from its damaged state that it had suffered a catastrophic event. Gustav's sharp eyes caught the finer details of the structure. "That's not just any spacecraft," he observed quietly, his mind racing to piece together the clues. "It's a prison, a floating penitentiary. Perhaps these people were prisoners." Endrick squinted at the display, absorbing the implications. A prison riot, or an attack, he wondered aloud, trying to make sense of the tragedy. "Let's not jump to conclusions without more information," Gustav cautioned. He approached the console and initiated a more detailed scan of the area. Gustav's fingers flew over the controls as he fine-tuned the sensors to analyze the wreckage and the bodies more closely. The enhanced scans revealed more details. The uniforms bore the insignia of a known intergalactic security firm, one that specialized in the most dangerous of criminals. This was a high-security transport vessel, then, Eldris deduced, piecing together the visual evidence with their database of ship designs and insignias. They must have been transporting some extremely dangerous individuals. Gustav leaned forward, his gaze intense as he studied the floating bodies and the wrecked structure. "The damage pattern isn't consistent with just a riot or a breakout attempt," he noted. "It looks like they were attacked from both inside and out. Something or someone wanted what was on this ship very badly." The revelation hung heavily in the room. The possibility of stumbling upon a space prison break was one in a lifetime. What were the chances? "We need to be cautious," Gustav decided. "We'll maneuver to avoid the debris field and continue on our path, but keep the sensors at maximum sensitivity. I don't want any more surprises." Endrick looked back at the screen, his expression pensive. "Should we check it out? Is it really any of our business?" Gustav threw this question back. "What if it does become our business? At least we could try to make sure of the fact that this wouldn't affect us in any way," Endrick pointed out. I doubt a bunch of very dangerous alien criminals would have anything to do with us. Gustav wasn't really interested. Let's just make sure. We will still have 2 weeks of free time anyways. No point in rushing, Eldris chipped in. Gustav considered this for a moment before finally agreeing. Sure. With this, Endrick navigated their ship towards the wreckage up ahead. The space transport vessel was thrice as large as their spacecraft, so they were able to fly in through one of the large holes left on it. Endrick was the first to get off the instant they got into the wreckage. What the hell? Chapter 1456. This is my victory. Do not unlock yet. So long as you got it. That is all that matters, Gustav stated with a nod of satisfaction. Where did Eldris and Rhea go? EE's eyebrows creased in confusion. He certainly couldn't sense them within or around the apartment, so it had him wondering if they had already left after failing to convince Gustav. They're out, engaging in a task to prove their capability, Gustav answered while crossing his legs. You really gave them something to do, EE voiced, his eyes glinting with interest. Of course, SJ is watching them now, so I should get feedback within an hour, Gustav responded in anticipation. You really don't want them to come with you, do you? EE questioned calmly. No, I do not, Gustav answered bluntly. I wonder just what crazy task you gave them. EE's thoughts ran amok. Gustav smirked in response. You'll see soon. Pass the dark sample to Endrick. We should be off soon, he added. EE took an item out of his storage device. Despite being kept within a container, dark energy still oozed from the sample. It wriggled continuously like it wanted to escape. EE's grasp. Let me take that off your hands. Endrick twirled his finger, causing telekinetic energy to wrap around the container. Fly, the container floated towards him in the next instant, and he grabbed it. You can head to the spacecraft and get it warmed up. It'll be with you in a minute, Gustav instructed. I don't want to miss their return, but all right. Endrick stood to his feet. Is she? He pointed at Cersei, but before he could complete his sentence, Gustav uttered a strongly disapproving no. Endrick shrugged and turned around to leave. It made sense that Gustav wouldn't want Cersei to be a part of the next journey. Considering that he was skeptical about Rhea and Eldris' participation, he definitely wouldn't give Cersei a single thought. I hope it's all right if she stays here with you. She's not from Earth, so she really doesn't have anyone on this planet. Gustav turned to EE. Sure thing, man. I have no issues with that, EE responded with an unbothered tone. Thanks. Maybe you can enroll her in. Gustav suddenly paused as he sensed something. EE noticed the strange look on his face and voiced, What? Gustav squinted his eyes before speaking. Are you expecting visitors? What? I am N. Before EE could properly respond, a loud bang resonated across the building. With it came the appearance of 2 MBO officers. One of them was a face EE was familiar with, having seen her that day. Sorry about not using the door. You see, I had to visit uninvited. A feminine but husky voice laced with naughtiness drifted into his ears. General Reyna. EE gulped saliva while staring at the hole they made through the window that led to his balcony area. EE turned to face where Gustav was seated, only to see that it was empty. Why would you barge into my place like this, General Reyna? This is totally uncalled for. EE immediately regained his confidence and began berating her. It is inappropriate. A traitor shouldn't be stripped of their rights to complain. General Reyna took slow steps towards EE while speaking. What are you talking about, General? EE questioned with a befuddled expression. Don't play stupid. You and I are very much aware that the Universal Fugitive has been on Earth for some time, and guess who accommodated him during his stay here? General Gustav spoke while giving EE a very intense glare. I don't know what you're talking about, General. The appearance of the Universal Fugitive was confirmed to be a clone, as we all know. EE continued to play it off as completely clueless. Yes, we all know about that, but what everyone doesn't know is that the real Gustav faced the clone, and most likely faced the world's strongest as well. This is why the clone is nowhere to be found. Because he was involved in its disappearance, General Reyna began to walk in circles around EE. But you knew this, didn't you? A smirk appeared on her face at this moment. Why would I know that, General? Besides, all these are assumptions. The identity of that person is unknown. EE was screaming internally but managed to keep a calm face. Sigh, you really want to keep playing around? She stood before EE and placed her index finger on his chin. You know, I'm giving you the chance to share the glory with me. Just hand him over, she demanded. Ahem. EE reached out to grab her finger and slowly took it off his chin. Like I said, General, I don't know what you're talking about. If you believe what you're spouting so much, you're free to search my place. Oh, is that so? General Reyna took a step back. Have at it. EE was a bit on edge due to how suddenly the whole situation had unraveled, but he did his best to keep his composure. General Reyna turned to face Officer Gohan, who had been standing behind the entire time. He shook his head, as if in response to a silent question she had thrown at him. Her face bore an indescribable expression as she looked around. Who is this person? I never knew you lived with someone. General Reyna turned to face Cersei, who was seated on the sofa at the other end. She is a distant cousin. Is my relative not allowed to stay with me? Or is that some treacherous crime? EE asked with a rhetorical tone while moving closer to Cersei. Cersei was smart enough not to engage in the ongoing dialogue. She only smiled in response and sat quietly in place. General Reyna had a dissatisfied look on her face as she began to walk around the apartment. Officer Gohan remained at his initial spot, while a green glow appeared in his eyes. General Reyna returned to the living room after a few seconds. You really want to hand him over? The offer to share the glory of turning him in still stands, she said to EE with budding frustration. EE knew well that so long as General Reyna was unable to physically locate Gustav, she really couldn't do anything. General Reyna seemed to be scanning the premises with her senses, but couldn't come up with anything even after minutes had passed. She thought her mind could be playing tricks on her, and even visited different spots within the apartment physically, all to no avail. I'll give you a piece of advice now. I better not find out that his presence on Earth is linked to you in any way, or you will be sorry. She looked EE dead in the eye and unleashed a bit of her energy. Beta ranked, she's on the same rank with Gus. EE was a bit worried, but stood his ground. There won't be anything to be sorry about, General. I don't harbor criminals, EE voiced in response. Puff! General Reyna scoffed while walking away. Make sure you contact me if you decide to change your mind about joining me to turn him in, she stated from the balcony area, sounding almost 100% certain about her claim. What are you doing, Gohan? Let's go, she yelled to Gohan, who was still standing in place. Gohan, green, glowing eyes dimmed as he spoke. He was lying. What? General Reyna voiced in confusion. That girl isn't his cousin. I searched the records with my mind, connecting all his families all across the earth, from parents to uncles, to aunts to cousins to grandparents, all of them. I saw it all, dead and alive. Officer EE is not related in any way to this girl. Officer Gohan pointed at Cersei with a look of suspicion. Shit, EE yelled internally while gulping saliva. Well, you see, I've got nothing. EE was a terrible liar, so he was having difficulty coming up with a tangible explanation that wouldn't make the situation seem more suspicious. She actually happens to be my neighbor's daughter. You see, my neighbor is not indoors at the moment, so she decided to wait here. I don't want things to look off with some random girl in my apartment when I have a girlfriend. That's why I said she is my cousin. EE did as quickly as he could to pieces lie to the best of his abilities. Your cousin, your neighbor. A smile appeared on General Reyna's face as she began to walk towards EE. What lie are you going to spin next? Your sister's friend? She added with both a sarcastic and serious tone mixed. Damn, maybe I should have used that one. EE nearly face palmed. Chapter 1457. Let it end here. Do not unlock yet. SS Dam. Maybe I should have used that one. E nearly faced palmed. I still do not understand what you're talking about, General. Why is the girl a problem exactly? She isn't who you came here to find. E decided to stop mentioning relatives or any other excuse, and outright played coy. True, she isn't the one I am looking for. General Reyna arrived before E once more and stared into his eyes briefly. But maybe she has connections to him. Immediately after adding, she turned to the side and started walking towards Cersei. You don't mind if I ask her a few questions, do you? General Reyna emitted an intimidating presence while approaching. Without a warrant or anything that advocates a crime, isn't that against her rights? E voiced with a tone that slightly hinted at trepidation. Just a few friendly, simple questions. Nothing much, unless there is something to hide. General Reyna turned slightly to shoot E a glance. Ha ha, knock yourself out, General. E laughed wryly. I don't like where this is going. E screamed internally. General Reyna proceeded to bring out a holographic tab, which displayed a picture of Gustav. Have you seen this person before? She questioned with a keen gaze. Bang, bang, boom. Powerful ripples spread across the air due to an ongoing battle between a trio. Fwish after images could be spotted in the skies as they engaged one another powerfully. Blasts often rang out, and despite being distant from the surface, the icy terrain would occasionally split and shatter from the residual energy. No normal person could witness the ongoing battle due to their unparalleled speed as they bolted across the skies. However, on closer look, it was a 2 versus 1 battle. The figure in the middle was continuously deflecting blows from the other two and appeared to be doing it rather easily. One of the two had his arms covered in rocks as he repeatedly threw fierce jabs at the figure in the middle. Bang, bang, bang. The figure in between swayed his hands causally, slapping the fists away before they made contact. His arms looked like they were moving 1,000,000 times in just 1 second. Bang. He slapped the one covered in rocks away, sending him hurling across the air. Bam, bam, bam. He slammed into the icy surface below, sliding across it and forming wide crevices due to the force of the attack. Meanwhile, the other one whose attack had also been repeatedly getting deflected now had to face the figure with dark hair alone. Thanks for doing this, Sir Jack, he voiced in gratitude before opening his eyes. Not a problem. I was starting to get bored here anyways. Jack responded with a smile as he stared at the multiple twinkling colors in the eyes of the 75 youngster with silver hair before him. Jack's smile suddenly vanished the moment the world before him lost all color. He felt the space around him bending and contrasting in a very eerie manner, while the youngster across from him was the only being with color. Impressive. Jack's smile returned as he praised. Not impressive enough if you're still smiling. Aeldris' silver hair floated as he raised his index finger, which had a swirling mass of numerous colors above it, waving it forward slightly. The swirling mass sped towards Jack, who responded by thrusting a palm forward. Fwoosh, a star-patterned construct materialized into existence, fighting against the colorless domain as it flickered occasionally with colors, like a switch turning off and on. The construct collided with the swirling mass of multiple colors, causing a mass of blackness to form upon merging. Thank you, Aeldris smiled while spreading his palms apart. Pah! The moment he clasped his hands together, an incredibly immense suction force was generated from the dark mass. With such powerful suction force, even the earth should have been swallowed up in an instant. However, this suction force only seemed to affect Jack, who found himself unable to fight against it. This is ridiculous, he voiced internally as the black swirling mass pulled him into its center and formed restraints that held him in place. Now, Aeldris yelled, boom. A loud explosion rang out from underneath as the icy terrain ruptured, and a figure sped upwards with such immense force that it tore a line across the sky. A tempest accompanied by a flaming mountain of ice and volcanic magma trailed across the air with unbridled intensity. Behind it was Rhea, who stomped onto the bottom, sending it spiraling at the restrained Jack. Boom! A deafening collision reverberated across the vicinity, bringing with it harsh winds that blew everything away, Rhea and Eldris included. Shock waves spread across the air, turning miles of the icy terrain beneath to water. Everyone within a 500-mile radius could feel the earth quaking intensely, like it was about to give way. The battle was being fought in the sky, and yet it had greatly affected the surface beneath. "Did we get him?" Rhea voiced from below. "Being the strongest mixed blood in existence, you know the answer to that." Eldris smiled wryly. Not long after, Jack appeared in the distance where the skies were completely void of clouds. The last blast had blown them all away. He floated in place, practically unscathed except for a few cuts on his clothes. TCH, why is he so overpowered? Rhea felt like all his months of seclusion had been thrown down the drain. "Ha ha ha, come on, Rhea. Even Gustav would be unable to win," Eldris reminded him from the side. "But he's not even injured." "I trained for so long and am still so weak," Rhea voiced with a tone of defeat. Jack's figure suddenly vanished, reappearing before Rhea in the next instant. "You're not weak." Jack raised his palm to show Rhea that it was scalded. "You're just up against me. Some alphas would be unable to cause me even the tiniest bit of damage. So don't sell yourself short." Jack patted Rhea's shoulder. "Really?" Rhea's face suddenly lit up in excitement. "Of course. I'd say you're powerful enough to contend with a betranked mixed blood, and being that powerful at such a young age means that you will be stronger than me when you're my age." Jack smiled while floating upwards. "It'll give you 2 for effort. At least you made me use a pretty high level of strength to not only get out of that restraint, but also block your attack." Jack turned around to fly away after revealing. "Thank you," Rhea yelled, but he was already gone. Praise from the world's strongest. "Today is not a bad day," Eldris descended while speaking. "How did you do that trap thing?" Rhea questioned with a hint of curiosity. "Oh, that. I just bound his energy to my attack and used it to lure his essence and merge him into it. No one should be able to get out of that restraint so long as they attack it instead of evading," Eldris explained. "But he got out of it," Rhea said with a tone of confoundment. "He is Jack Sherwin." Within EBS apartment, General Reyna stared down at Cersei, who kept answering all her questions with no. "So you've never seen Gustav Crimson before? You don't know who he is, and you have no connection to him?" General Reyna voiced with her tone rising every second. Cersei shook her head in response. "General, you said this was going to be friendly and brief. Would you please stop harassing the poor girl?" E voiced from the side with a tone of annoyance. General Reyna wore a smile and stood upright before turning around. "I have checked. There is nothing," Gohan voiced from the side. "No records, no birth certificate, no database whatsoever on this young girl. It's like she just appeared out of thin air," he added. "How intriguing, coming into existence around the same period Gustav Crimson is suspected to be on Earth. What an interesting coincidence indeed." General Reyna gazed at EE, briefly to note his reaction. EE was quiet, seemingly racking his brain on how to respond to her. "Since someone that doesn't exist is currently in here, I guess it wouldn't be what I do to her now, would it?" General Reyna suddenly reached out at that moment to grab Cersei. "General Reyna, what are you doing?" EE yelled while strutting forward, but before he could get close, Gohan threw a glowing icy cube towards the floor before him. A triangular barrier of light suddenly surrounded EE, trapping him in place. "You use spatial abilities, right? That will keep you from interfering for a while." General Reyna smiled while watching EE bang the walls of the barrier constantly. He tried to conjure a vortex, but to no avail. General Reyna drove a fist into Sarah's belly at that moment, causing her to spit out a mouthful of blood. "Cersei, let her go. You witch." voiced out in anguish. Just stay in there, and don't interfere. General Reyna turned to face Cersei once more before raising her. I'm only dealing with someone who shouldn't exist. Immediately after saying that, she threw another punch forward. Enough! Chapter 1458 that took longer than expected do not unlock, yet Gustav stared back at her, and with a smirk, I know what you're thinking, he stated. If only you could get to that and tap on the emergency button quick enough. This place would be stormed by tens of MBO operatives and ID be taken into custody. You'll get rewarded and possibly promoted too. You just need to get to it and tap a button before I strip your body of its free will again, Gustav narrated while pointing at the corner where the communicative device was positioned. That's not what I'm thinking. General Reyna finally spoke. I'm thinking. Zin's an immense bloodline energy suddenly burst forth from her figure as she vanished from her spot. Eyes widened in disbelief seeing as she had escaped, but in the next instant, bam, her figure reappeared in the balcony area. Arf! Her loud scream resonated across the place as she tried to claw her way forward. It was at that moment that noticed that half of her body was missing. The missing half that held her legs was right in the living room with them. A sea of scarlet liquid was splurging from her lower half as she pulled her torso forward with a look that showed that she was in excruciating pain. What the fuck just happened? Was utterly confused. She tried to escape, so I cut off her legs, Gustav answered. Her entire lower half is gone, man. Pointed, looking disgusted. Potato, Gustav mumbled. But I didn't see you move. Was still in disbelief. Well, my full strength already returned, so that's quite normal, Gustav shrugged. She's trying to go. Pointed at General Reyna, who was still clawing her way forward. Gohan, bring her back in here, Gustav said to the other MBO officer, who was frozen in a spot with fear. Yes, sir. Sweat dabbled down his face as his legs vibrated tremendously with every step he took. You already know what happens if you try to escape, so. Gustav cautioned Gohan, who had arrived at the balcony area. With how frightened Gohan was, the last thing on his mind was escaping. I'm dead. Damn it, I should never have come with her. Gohan was screaming internally while dragging General Reyna's figure toward the living room. A trail of blood decorated the floor, causing to stare at Gustav with a look of disapproval. My rug is stained, ugh. He retched in disgust. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. After I'm done with these two, Gustav reassured him. I know you're in a lot of pain. However, I want you to listen to me and answer my questions. Who else did you tell of my suspected presence on Earth? Gustav questioned with an intense gaze. No. Body, she answered while writhing in immense agony. Tell me the truth, Gustav demanded. It is true, Gohan stated from behind. Gustav's face rose as he shot Gohan a glance. Gohan felt chills spread across his body, causing him to gulp saliva in distress. She wanted to keep all the glory of catching you to herself, so she refused to let anyone else know of her suspicion. Gohan rambled on, as if his life depended on it. Truthfully, it did. What a greedy woman! Gustav clicked his tongue twice in ridicule. He also thought that she had acted very greedily, but he still felt a little bad for her. You really should have just looked the other way, he stated. So, what do you intend to do with them? He questioned Gustav. The midget is lucky. He is quite weak, so I can extract his memories. But for this one. Gustav stared at General Reyna. Ooh, this is the end for you. Immediately after blurting it out, Gustav raised his left hand. Atomic disintegration has been activated. Goodbye. General. A swirling mass of milky-colored energy materialized above his palm. He tried to conjure a vortex, but to no avail. Cersei's eyes lit up with an azure glow as frost spread from her figure to the surroundings, turning the apartment into an icy domain in an instant. General Reyna's arm, which was connected to Cersei's neck, got frozen as well. Cersei freed herself from the general's clutches and conjured a bunch of icicles from midair. She waved her hand forward, causing the icicles to shoot toward the triangular prison he was restrained in. Bam, bam, bam. The icicles did a bit of damage, causing the triangular prison to flicker a bit, but it didn't manage to destroy it. She conjured more, but just as she was about to send them hurling forward, a loud shattering sound rang out behind her. Cersei turned around to see a hand reaching for her throat. Krr! She groaned in pain as General Reyna, who was unscathed, grabbed her by the throat and raised her like a weak little chick. Cersei held General Reyna's arm in a bid to force it away from her throat, but to no avail. Frost spread from her hand to General Reyna's arm and even her entire body, but the moment her eyes emitted a crimson glow, the ice shattered once more. Nice trick with the frost, but this level of ice is not nearly enough to hold me. General Reyna drove a fist into Cersei's belly, causing her to spit out a mouthful of blood. Bang! The entire building quaked from the strength of the punch, causing the already shattered window in the apartment to blast into more pieces as Cersei's belly caved in. Kerch! A wave of pain spread across her entire body as she struggled to breathe from the impact of the punch. Cersei, let her go, you witch! He voiced out in anguish. Just stay in there and don't interfere. General Reyna turned to face Cersei once more, while keeping her feet above the floor. I'm only dealing with someone who shouldn't exist. Immediately after saying that, she threw another punch forward. Enough! A masculine voice resonated within the apartment like a heavenly mandate. It was soft and hard at the same time, rippling across the surroundings with authority. General Reyna found herself unable to drive the punch forward any further as she heard the voice. Gohan, who was still shivering from Cersei's frost, stared at the figure in their midst with utter disbelief. Gustav crimson. General Reyna turned around in shock as well, where, however, there was no one behind her. She felt her left hand lighten and turned to peer forward again, only to realize that Cersei had been released from her clutches. Gustav carried Cersei in princess style after putting a healing med in her mouth. You're truly here, on Earth. I knew it, she voiced in excitement. She noticed that she was free to move her hands again and tried to grab a communication device from her storage. Kneel, Gustav voiced. General Reyna suddenly had the unfathomable urge to go on her knees. What is happening? Her voice cracked while she tried to resist. Meanwhile, on the other end, Gohan had fallen to his knees already. He wasn't spared as well. He fell forward, and his knees kissed the floors of the apartment. You can't resist the command of a cosmic superior being. Gustav sounded like he was giving a divine mandate, one that couldn't be resisted by the likes of mere mortals. Now, kneel, he added. The urge suddenly increased by tenfold, forcing General Reyna to her knees. Bam! The device in her grasp fell to the floor and slid over to Gustav's side. He carefully placed Cersei on another sofa and headed back toward General Reyna. He kicked the communication device away as he trotted forward and stopped the moment he arrived before General Reyna's kneeling figure. A detached sofa appeared directly before her struggling frame. Gustav took a seat with an unbothered expression while crossing his legs. I heard you were looking for me. Well, here I am, he stated calmly. The place descended into complete silence, with General Reyna struggling to gain control of her body. What? Cat's got your tongue? Gustav leaned forward a little while asking. You wanted me. I'm right in front of you. Now, say something. A sadistic grin suddenly appeared on Gustav's face at that moment. Oh, that's right. You can't. Be at ease, Gustav commanded. Every one of them suddenly felt the pressure vanish. He quickly jumped to his feet while yelling, Come on, man. I'm here too. My bad. Gustav flicked his index finger forward. A small torrent of invisible waves shot toward the triangular prison. Bang! It shattered instantly, freeing Evie. He wasted no time in scampering towards Gustav and standing behind him. Meanwhile, General Reyna remained in place, breathing in and out profusely. How is he capable of such, with just his words? She slowly raised her head and met Gustav's eyes. Chapter 1459. You have no idea, do not unlock yet, thanks, E voiced while opening his eyes once more. SJ proceeded to seat on the other end, waiting for Gustav's return. What about Endrick? Eldris questioned once more. He should be back in the spacecraft. Gustav sent him there, within a marvelously designed and computerized location. One could see a harmonious blend of functionality and aesthetics tailored for the unforgiving void of space. Directly ahead where the command center lay was a semicircular array of control panels and holographic displays stationed before ergonomically designed seats. Two of the seats happened to be occupied by a male and female figure. You really can't be here, Endrick said to the pretty girl on his left with white short hair. She is my best friend. Remember? There is no way of missing out, Matilda responded with a stubborn expression. He won't let you. Endrick shook his head. Gustav can suck on my toes for all I care. I am coming, she voiced with an undaunting look. I want suck on your toes, but you are definitely not coming, a familiar male voice rang out from behind. Big brother. Gustav. They both turned around at the same time in shock. When did you? Matilda was obviously more astonished than Endrick, since she had no idea of Gustav's current strength. It doesn't matter. Gustav cut her off while approaching. Hello to you two, Matilda begrudgingly. It had been months since they last set eyes on each other, and yet Gustav couldn't even say a single hello to her. When did you return to Earth? Shouldn't you still be there? Gustav pointed up. Someone who was supposed to inform me about any matters relating to Angie chose to keep it to himself, and wanted to go on a journey of recovery himself. Thankfully, I put a bug on him the last time I saw him. So, of course, I became aware of the happenings. Matilda crossed her arms while shooting a glare at Gustav. Gustav rolled his eyes. I should have known. Listen, Matilda, this isn't a joke. You cannot come, he added while gently shoving her towards the side. Hey, Matilda, Eldris and Rhea voiced while stepping into the spacecraft. But they can... Matilda felt betrayed. They're stronger than you. Gustav tilted his head slightly. Rhea and Eldris had passed the test he set for them, so he could no longer deny them access to join this endeavor. That is unfair. You and I worked side by side to restore Planet Abrookies. If anything, I am more qualified than them. Matilda stomped furiously like a pissed-off high school girl. Ouch, Eldris muttered. I'm sorry, Eldris. I was just trying to get him to see the point. She turned around while opening her arms to embrace him. Eldris hugged her back. It's been a while. He displayed a warm smile. Yes, it's been. How have you guys been? We don't have time for this. Gustav interrupted before pleasantries could be properly exchanged. I'm leaving now before another crazed MBO officer comes in search of me. I don't want to leave a pile of bodies behind. Gustav proceeded to take a seat right before the main control panel. Cersei moved towards a seat and strapped herself in quickly while the spacecraft engine came alive. The spacecraft quaked a bit, depicting that it was ready to go if Gustav willed it. Eldris and Rhea swiftly moved towards the sides to take a seat as well. They strapped themselves in, and Matilda did the same. I thought you said she wasn't coming with us, Endrick said to Gustav. She isn't, Gustav responded while tapping the bracelet attached to his left wrist. Spatial point selected, squinting eyes face, dimensional travel in. Squinting eyes face 3. Gustav stood to his feet once more and reappeared before Matilda. What are you doing? Matilda questioned with a look of suspicion as Gustav reached out to grab her shoulder. This is for your own good, Gustav stated in response. 1. Before Matilda could react, a burst of bluish light engulfed her figure and she vanished. Shesh, that's harsh, Rhea whistled from the side. Like I said, for her own good, Gustav returned to his initial seating position and pushed a throttle. Hinson, the world before them turned blurry as white lines appeared all around. This was due to the speed of the spacecraft. In just a second, they had left Earth and arrived in outer space. Second time leaving the planet. I hope it doesn't turn out as bad as the first, Eldris muttered with a reminiscent tone. We're stronger now compared to back then, Rhea folded his arms while voicing. Don't be overconfident. You have no idea what lays ahead, Gustav stated while peering at the view of the orbital bodies that lay before him. The expanse of outer space spread wide, vividly, charging their bodies with a feeling of tension as a sense of foreboding overcame them. Goodbye, General. A swirling mass of milky-colored energy materialized above his palm. No. Pieliesi IWNTT. LL. Her pleas were cut short as Gustav waved his palm downwards. The milky-colored mass that resembled a flame descended upon her torso. General Reyna was unable to scream as her vocal cords got obliterated along with the rest of her body. In just a few seconds, not even a shred of her existence could be spotted before Gustav. Congratulations, you just killed a general, E voiced from the side. No one will know, Gustav hinted at erasing Gohan memories. She's a general. Her disappearance is bowed to raise suspicion, E pointed out. It won't be a problem. She made sure of that by being so greedy about not informing any other person. Gustav tried to ease the worries. Any other person except for him. Who do you think they will question first? E voiced while gesturing at Officer Gohan. What if they investigate his movements, and everything points back to me? E added with a tone of distraught. Relax. When I say you'll take care of it, I mean I will take care of it. Gustav stood to his feet while speaking. E decided to calm down after hearing this. It wasn't Gustav's first rodeo after all. He had done worse and still managed to cover them up till this day. Even when this whole saga began, Gustav already put a sound restriction in the environment to prevent voices from escaping the confines of the apartment. So despite General Reyna's screams, not a single soul outside of their apartment heard her. Gustav walked towards Gohan, who was still shivering in horror after watching General Reyna get completely obliterated without as much as an expression of guilt or remorse on Gustav's face. All Gohan could think of was how much he had heard of Gustav's mercilessness, and now he was vividly going through an experience that confirmed them. Please. His throat was dry from how many times he had gulped down saliva, but he still managed to utter with croaked voice. Keep quiet, I'm not going to kill you, Gustav commanded while placing his hand on Officer Gohan's head. Gohan muffled his heavy breathing in fear of pissing Gustav off. Mental manipulation has been activated. They'll just modify your memories. You're going to forget that any of this happened, Gustav stated with a tone of certainty. At this moment, Gohan's eyes suddenly turned listless. We're back, Rhea voiced loudly upon arriving within EES apartment alongside Eldris. Welcome, E raised a cup of tea to them. We did it, Rhea yelled excitedly. Where is Gustav? Eldris inquired after noticing that only EE and Cersei were in. He's out tampering with some records. He'll be back after getting rid of traces to the incident that occurred here today, E answered with a slightly exhausted tone. Incident? What happened? Rhea and Eldris questioned simultaneously. Well, we got ambushed. Kinda. That place you're stepping on right now is where an MBO general died. E pointed at Rhea's legs. What? An MBO general died. Both of them were mostly shocked because the apartment looked completely normal. It didn't seem like anything crazy happened during their time away. This was because Gustav had gotten rid of all the bloodstains using atomic manipulation. He had returned Gohan to the MBO tower after manipulating his memories and knocking him out. E went on to explain everything that had happened while they were away, and how Gustav's timely intervention pretty much saved the day. "Are you okay, Cersei?" Eldris asked Cersei, who was laying on the sofa towards the left. "I'm good." "Father erased that unruly woman from existence," Cersei voiced joyfully. Eldris nodded in response while Rhea made a strange face, showing the sacred jewel appeared in the middle of the apartment, emitting a bright glow. "Turn it down, SJ, he complained while shutting his eyes. A red robe materialized out of nowhere and covered part of SJ's surface. Arms and legs grew out of his sides as well, and soon SJ was standing on 2 feet. Chapter 1460, The Gathering, do not unlock yet. 2 days later. Flyish, a pentagon-shaped spacecraft with the Tark's emblem, drifted across space with incredible speed. The twinkling icy glows in the distance gave this part of space a surreal beauty. It was the only source of illumination around here, as dark matter spread, as far as the eyes could see. A few space rocks were scattered about the place, but the spacecraft streaked forward undisturbed. The spacecraft cut a blazing white line through this part of space, obliterating the rocks in its path without even making physical contact. Within the spacecraft, the passengers remained strapped it as it vibrated constantly, emitting a blinking yellow light in the control room. "Okay, so where exactly are we going now?" Rhea realized he never asked this until now. "Well, did we tell you about the time we visited Zelio's tower?" Endrick questioned from the side. "You too visited Zelio's tower?" Eldris was in disbelief while Rhea was completely clueless. "That's how we got information about how to get to the other side," Endrick answered with a spooky tone. "I thought that place was just a legend. To think it truly exists." Eldris had a look of immense contemplation. "What is this Zelio's tower?" Rhea questioned. "It's a place that can get you the answers to any question, but usually the price is hefty. Most times impossible to pay," Endrick explained with a solemn tone. "Isn't it just cash?" Rhea voiced with a clueless look. "No," Eldris and Endrick stated at the same time. "Chill." Rhea moved his neck backwards in startlement. Eldris turned to face Endrick once more. "So they told you how to get Falco and Angie back?" "They told us where to head and what to do after we get there to gain access in order to bring them back. And that is where we are headed now," Endrick answered once more. "Does that mean we will finally get to pay back those monsters for ruining Aesop and destroying planet Ozius?" Rhea questioned with a tone of anticipation. "No," Endrick shook his head. "Why? This is our chance for a payback," Rhea voiced with an incomprehensible expression. "You don't know, do you?" Endrick turned his seat around to face them. "Know what? The reason Gustav doesn't want any of you two there is because the other side is a lot different from our plane, which means the strength of creatures from there wouldn't be dampened. They will be able to use their full power," Endrick explained with a tone of seriousness. Rhea's eyes widened in realization that wasn't their full power. "Not even close," Endrick answered. Rhea recalled the death angels corroding everything in existence with just their presence, being unkillable and incredibly powerful. It was like an explosion at the back of his mind as he realized that they would be way more powerful on that plane. Not to mention that our strengths would have been dampened. Endrick revelation caused Rhea to gulp down saliva. "Thankfully, Big Brother knows how to counter that," he added. "So we're not going there to fight." "Not at all. We're only going to get our friends back. If we have any luck, we won't need to face any creature from there," Endrick pointed out. "How are we going to do that?" Rhea didn't see how it was possible to not encounter any being from there, because the access point will be taking us directly to the people we're searching for. It's possible we could encounter beings from that plane, but if we act quick, it's also possible that we won't. Within the vicissitudinous of space, a platform shaped like a syringe floated in place, giving off an imposing aura. From afar, it seemed very tiny, almost like it could be overlooked and missed. However, the moment one drew closer, The size underwent an unbelievable change, becoming incredibly massive and eye-catching. Lines of white light surrounding it on all corners as it radiated in such an indescribable manner. Spacecrafts flew into the perimeter and vanished upon getting bathed with the white lines of light it emitted. Within the heart of the structure was a sort of assembly point. The interior looked so masterfully erected that one would think had entered a higher dimension. The surroundings were bathed in inklings of starlights, and the assembly point was structured in a circular format with smooth surfaces forming a sort of spiral. They were like stacks upon one another that got smaller the higher one went. Pulpit-like stations were protruding from every circular stack from the bottom down to the top, which was centered in the very middle. Thousands of these pulpits also represented thousands of extraterrestrial species who stood before them to represent their various planets. Planet Fixic, Planet Diaperonian, Planet Draconet, Planet Osius, Planet Hixto, Planet Diov, Planet Tronvida, Planet Oxlurk, Planet Triptes, Planet Gundabalt, Planet Zillion, Planet Claxosape, Planet Taurin, Planet Cyrus, Planet Osiris, Planet Orion, Planet Astambid, Planet VA, Planet Roidenstack, Planet V#B, Planet Kivendale, Planet T429, and so many other that participated in ISOP were all represented here by various extraterrestrial parties. Every being here oozed with indescribable power that was beyond the comprehension of ordinary folks. At the top of the circular structured stacks, 9 out of 10 pulpits were occupied, leaving the last one empty. The beings at the very top got to look down on the others that were spread across the ethereal-looking vicinity. We don't want him killed. It is best that the bounty on him remains the same as before. Wanted alive, General Chell addressed the Alliance from the top of the stack. A few mummers could heard from the surroundings, but they couldn't refute. This was Earth's decision, and they had all decided to honor it. They continued on with the meeting after a few moments. Ekurla Ariai kun kok dvi was it. One of the beings at the very top of circular stacks spoke in a language that no human would be able to understand. Fortunately, every being present within this structure had their translation devices equipped. So, despite the difference in languages between extraterrestrial species, they could hear one another. The Universal Fugitive was last spotted in the Zelios Tower. He was lost before the Alliance could get to him. The extraterrestrial being, who happened to be amongst the council of the Alliance leader, voiced with a loud tone. We need as much information as we can get, so as to understand his motives and movement in order to capture him. Our forces are spread too thin. You lots have to volunteer warriors from your planets to join the Alliance Corps. The extraterrestrial being who represented planet Draconet chimed loudly. A glowing light appeared above that read Osius. Everyone peered in the direction of the planet Osius representative, who happened to be Vilac's father. It was quite the fall from grace for them, because usually they'd be at the highest circular stack with the others. Planet Osius? One of the Alliance leaders voiced. The pulpit before Handler 3 emitted a white glow, which gave him the go-ahead to speak. The information on the Universal Fugitive is not up to date, he announced with a tone of certainty. What do you mean, not up to date? General Chell questioned with a look of concern. The other Alliance leaders were just as curious after hearing that. The last time Gustav Crimson was spotted, actually not spotted. Handler 3 paused for a bit. Gustav Crimson didn't leave the Zelios Tower alone. He left with a group that included my son. Mummers, Handler 3 went on to narrate the turn of events dating back from when the Oxus group went with Gustav in search of Sealing to when they found him, and all they had to do to save their lost people. He didn't leave out the part of Gustav being the major key to victory, and how they saved many other species with his help. A lot of the planetary representatives, especially the Alliance leaders, were getting restless as they listened to this narration. This was mostly due to the fact that Gustav had just accomplished something that had taken them centuries of failures. C-Filing, who was practically impossible to locate, was found and dealt with by a child who was only a bit older than 20 years of age. No, only that, he saved the lives of many others in the process, making the whole saga about him being a planet destroyer seem ridiculous. He was supposed to be evil, but this was putting a dent on his evil reputation, and it didn't help their objective to have him captured. C-Filing is dead? Another Alliance leader blurted out in disbelief. Yes, he is gone forever, and we have Gustav Crimson to thank for that. He saved the life of billions, not to mention recovering my people, Handler 3 answered. But he is responsible for the destruction of your planet in the first place. This must be his way of trying to make up for it. He is still guilty, another Alliance leader voiced. What if he isn't? Handler 3 didn't know when he blurted this out. Chapter 1461 Universal Contradictions Do Not Unlock. Yet, what if he isn't? Handler 3 didn't know when he suddenly blurted this out. Mummers, mummers, mummers. You would show compassion for the culprit responsible for the destruction of your planet? One of the Alliance leaders voiced with a detestable tone. Not even we think he is innocent. General Chell further fueled this notion. I am just saying, it doesn't seem like what an evil planet destroyer would spend his time doing, especially when he stated having more important matters to get to, Handler 3 voiced in response. More important matters? General Chell questioned in suspicion. You know something, don't you, Handler 3? The Alliance leader representing the Draconites raised 4 of his limbs while speaking. Is there hope for we the Ozas to reclaim our seat as one of the Alliance leaders? Handler 3 threw a question back. They understood what he was driving at upon mentioning that. It turned out that he wanted to strike a bargain for the information he had on Gustav. Yes, there is hope, General Chell stated. When one Alliance leader spoke, he spoke for all, so the others did not refute his answer. I am sorry, Vilax, but I will always choose our people over outsiders. Handler 3 apologized internally, feeling remorseful for a few seconds. Good. Handler 3 began speaking once more. Gustav Crimson is trying to recover 2 of his friends that got lost during the destruction of our planet, which is why he headed for Zelio's tower in the first place. His next destination after that was back to his home planet, Earth. General Chell's eyes widened slightly in confoundment upon hearing this. Are you sure about this? News flashed in his head of everything that happened on Earth in the last 3 weeks. I am most certain, although it is very much possible that he has gotten what he came for and left already, but his main objective was most likely to get something that could only be found on Earth. Handler 3's revelation caused a brief general silence. I see, General Chell mumbled after a while. Handler 3, who else have you informed about the C-Filing incident? One of the Alliance leaders questioned. Only my people are aware. Handler 3 answered immediately. Let's keep things that way. And to the rest of you, the story of the C-Filing incident must never leave the confines of this space. General Chell stated with an authoritative tone. In the uncharted vastness of space, beyond the reaches of known galaxies, a monumental spacecraft shaped like a pentagon sailed forward, reflecting the sparse light of distant stars. It bore the emblem of a mythical creature with serpentine coils and ferocious eyes. This Tark emblem would do away to keep any spacecraft with nefarious intent, but it was a different case when they met with natural space anomalies. They were currently journeying across a perilous expanse, a stretch of space notorious for its unpredictable gravitational anomalies, fields of cosmic debris, and sudden, violent energy storms. This region was a graveyard for many and unwary travelers. Debris from desolate spacecraft dying away in different corners was a normal sight around here. Suddenly, the ship shuddered as it encounters an unexpected gravitational wave, sending it veering off course. Hold on tight, Gustav yelled within the spacecraft as he manually navigated them through a dense anti-gravitational energy field. The silhouette of the spacecraft glided gracefully, its pentagonal form allowing for maneuverability that belied its size. The ship weaved through the torrents of energy slicing forth. They barely slipped through the spaces between some, causing the spacecraft to tremble immensely at certain times. As they veered further forward, a massive energy storm, its swirling colors a mesmerizing display of nature's power and fury, appeared in their line of sight. Gustav powers up the thruster, ready to jump the ship through this abysmally immense energy storm that seemed unavoidable. The spacecraft pulsated with energy as lightning-like discharges strike the shields, illuminating the spacecraft in a spectral dance of light and shadows. As the ship rumbled and drew closer, Gustav suddenly pushed the jump control panel. Freya, the spacecraft, turned into a streak of light that shot through the storm of energy, penetrating its center on a subatomic level. Emerging from the storm, the spacecraft appears in a part of space that seemed rather stable compared to earlier. Phew, Rhea let out a sigh of relief upon noticing the stability. "We are not completely out of the blue yet," Gustav announced. "What? We've been at this for nearly 4 days now." Rhea was in utter disbelief. "That's why it's called Dead Man Zone. No spacecraft manages to maneuver past this part of space successfully," Gustav responded. "And why exactly did we pass here again?" Rhea questioned. "It's the fastest way to where we're headed," Eldris answered from the side. I think I'd prefer the long way, so long as we don't get turned to mush," Rhea stated with a look of disapproval. "Yeah, only that. It would take us at least 4 months of journeying through space," Endrick pointed out from up ahead. "I take it back," Rhea voiced with droppy eyes. "Don't worry, in another day or 2 we'll be out of it. Afterwards, we just need to travel for another 5 days before getting to our destination," Gustav said with a tone of assurance. "Well, cut back on over 3 months of time," Endrick added. "If we don't die first," Rhea sighed. "Ha ha!" The group burst into laughter. "You'll be seeing why it is called the Dead Man Zone soon. But no worries, we'll scale through," Gustav voiced amidst chuckles. They continued on for another day without having any mishaps. This journey through space gave them a feeling of nostalgia, taking them back to when this was done together as a group. It was quite disheartening that more than half of the group couldn't join them on this endeavor, but after getting the details, it made sense to Eldris why Gustav wouldn't want anyone joining. "So this place, you say it connects across galaxies because it is located at a focal point in outer space that makes it everywhere and nowhere at the same time?" Eldris questioned with a tone of bafflement. "That is what the mundane one told us," Endrick answered. "I'm not sure I get it." Rhea shook his head, and for once Eldris was on the same page with him. Some things in the universe are never going to make sense. But basically what the mundane one means is we are journeying to the center of the universe. How do they know that it is the center of the universe? "Beats me too." Gustav proceeded to give a brief explanation. "The planet that exists in that location is desolate and on the brink of utter desiccation. It exists in such a manner that it touches all planes of reality and connects to every reach of the universe. Due to that, it is everywhere and nowhere at the same time," he added. "And that is the reason we can use it to get to Angie and Falco," Rhea voiced in realization. "Pretty much. I see." Eldris still had a contemplative look on his face as they kept journeying. "You do know that this action may bring you face to face with him, right?" The system questioned in Gustav's mind. "I knew that from the moment I decided to embark on this journey," Gustav answered internally. "You're not powerful enough to face him. You know, he could snuff you out of existence with just a single breath." The system cautioned. "Oh, so now we can talk about him? Didn't you say that could cause consequences?" Gustav scoffed internally. "We're closer to the due periods of your quest, so yes, we can talk about him to an extent now without causing problems." The system answered. "Whatever. I don't intend to face him yet anyways." "Well, just grab Angie and Falco, and get out of there before they realize it, Gustav voiced internally. Overconfident much. I'd rather be that than underconfident. That is not a word. Shut up, Gustav pushed a button, and the spacecraft sped up, attracting the attention of the two behind. What's up again? Rhea voiced while peering straight ahead. We're about to face another energy storm, Gustav announced. Just when I thought we were past this, Rhea glued his bum to the seat tightly at this moment. Nah, this is going to be the worst one, Gustav chuckled briefly. You are about to find out why it is called the Dead Man Zone. Rhea's eyes widened as he spotted the sea of violent energy swimming across space with incredible destructiveness. Unlike the previous ones they had encountered, this one covered their entire line of sight, looming over them like it was about to swallow everything up. It was like an enormous net, with each string the size of a planet that would obliterate anything upon contact. Furthermore, just like nets, there were little spaces in between. However, were these spaces large enough for their spacecraft to fit? Chapter 1462, A Tree. Do not unlock, yet the endearing term beauty is dangerous had never been more true until now. Despite how marvelous the sight was, anyone and anything would be obliterated in an instant should they come this close. The journey through the violent net of energy lasted for almost an entire day. By the time they successfully navigated through, Gustav had expended a lot of energy. Fortunately, they were now in the clear, so it was all worth it. We're out of the Dead Man Zone. Gustav let out a heavy breathe after announcing. That was both enlightening and terrifying at the same time, Rhea stated with a mesmerized tone. I agree. Truly never felt anything like that in my life. All those colors. Eldris voiced with a look of interest. He wished he could have absorbed them, but he knew it would mess with their navigation, so he couldn't risk it. At least it's going to be smooth sailing from henceforth, Endrick stated from up ahead. I'm not so sure about that, Gustav suddenly voiced with an ominous tone. Huh? What is that? Is that a... Yes, it's a person. Gustav confirmed their suspicions on what laid out ahead. Hundreds of kilometers before their spacecraft was a figure floating in outer space without so much as a space gear or anything to help them breathe. They just floated in place with a glowing crimson hair that looked like the branches of a tree. This person commanded their attention due to these multiple traits, but Gustav wasn't interested in knowing who they might be. He pushed the throttle forward after the spacecraft engines cooled off a bit, causing them to sail in a straight line with immense speed. Common sense told them that a being floating and breathing in space with a glowing hair wasn't a weak person. It was better to leave now than to be sorry later. In just an instant, they had crossed light years of distance, leaving the unknown far being behind. Or so they thought. Din, 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 din. Hostile force in pursuit. Squinting eyes face. Activating energy shield alarms suddenly began blurring within the spacecraft as a silver-colored energy shield appeared around it. What the hell? Rhea yelled in bafflement. It's that person. Endrick stared at the holographic projection that displayed the rear position of their spacecraft. Not too distant behind them was a crimson blur streaking across space with unparalleled speed. Upon closer look, this crimson blur happened to be the same person they had spotted after getting out of the Dead Man Zone. Endrick and Rhea couldn't believe their eyes as they saw how quick the humanoid-shaped being was flying. They were moving faster than the speed of light, and yet it was starting to catch up with them. Whoever it was, they were definitely no ordinary being. Gustav couldn't chase a spacecraft and catch it up at his current level of strength, so this person was no doubt more powerful, since only Miss Amy could successfully pull something like this off. Buckle up, Gustav yelled while tapping on multiple buttons at a time. He was preparing to activate hyperjump, since it was becoming difficult to outsize the being currently in pursuit. What if his friendly... Rhea questioned from behind. Maybe I can kick you out so you two can have a friendly chat then, far from the rest of us. Gustav retorted with a tone of seriousness. Rhea, I don't know what he wants, but I certainly don't want to stick around to find out, Eldris stated. Me neither, Gustav added. Jump now. Endrik suddenly yelled. Gustav didn't need to be told twice before he pushed the hyper jump button. Seeing their spacecraft suddenly pivoted forward like a needle cutting through the fabric of space. They vanished in the next moment and reappeared in another part of space, completely void of the presence of the Crimson Being. That's a day-worth journey. Gustav announced that they had put a lot of distance between themselves and the hostile. So we can get to our destination in 4 days then? Rhea questioned. That is right. I was hoping we wouldn't have to use hyperjump, but it couldn't be helped this time. Gustav mumbled with a cautious look. I wonder who that person is, and what their objective could be. Eldris bore an expression of contemplation as he spoke. SJ, Gustav called out. Sing, SJ appeared in the middle of the spacecraft, gleaming intensely. A red robe materialized into existence and covered its surface to dim the immense brightness. Did you get a clear view? Gustav questioned. SJ proceeded to create a holographic screen for everyone to see. On this screen was a clear image of the being they had just encountered a while back. Its full structure was on display for them to see. It's one of the faceless. I should have known. Gustav nearly face-bombed. The faceless, Eldris and Rhea voiced, obliviously. One of 3 beings who are the last of their kind in the entire universe, Endrik briefly explained. Are they, very strong? Rhea questioned. Obviously, all 3 of them have apparently been in existence for millennium, and since they are rare, they have tried siring more of their species for a long time to no avail, Endrik added. So, what would they want with us? Rhea asked. More like what would they want with him? Eldris turned to Gustav's direction. Rhea was still confused. The thing is, one of them is very obsessed with bearing more of their species that they would take any job, so long as the reward gave information on the subject of interest. They could be killers, saviors, fighters, protectors. Endrik paused at this point. Or even bounty hunters. Eldris chipped in. Yes, or even bounty hunters, so long as whatever the reward is has information regarding what they require to create new offsprings. It makes it very rare for them to accept any job, not because millions of people across the galaxy aren't trying to acquire their assistance on personal matters, but because meeting their requirements is borderline impossible, Endrik kept explaining. Which means someone must have met their requirements this time. Most likely someone from the Alliance. Eldris bore a look of understanding at this point. But how did they find us? It was almost like that faceless one knew we were coming. It was waiting for us. Eldris wasn't the only one interested in the answer to this question. Rhea was just as curious. You see, the abilities of a faceless one is, how do I put it? Endrik paused while holding his chin. Unpredictable, Gustav stated. Yes, unpredictable. Endrik nodded. How so? Eldris asked. Endrik stood to his feet and pointed at the holographic projection that displayed the faceless one image. Notice the branch-like hair? Just like nets, there were little spaces in between, but were these spaces large enough for their spacecraft to fit? How is the spacecraft going to get through that? Rhea yelled in terror. It was very obvious that the little spaces were not wide enough for them to pass through without getting obliterated. To make matters worse, the throngs of violent torrents were moving and swimming almost like they were alive. That's the trick. It can't, Gustav answered Rhea. Then how are we going to survive? Rhea didn't know what Gustav playing it here, but he internally decided to curse Gustav if he said they want. We will. Gustav drove head on for it, unwavering in the slightest. Unlike Rhea, Eldris wasn't bothered because he had full trust in Gustav. However, he was just as intrigued as Rhea was about Gustav's plans. Can we just hyperjump through it? Eldris inquired. It won't work. The energy torrent are like strings, no matter how strong the hyperjump is. The moment it goes through, The violent energy will keep pulling it back to its center until it runs out of juice. Once that happens, and the spacecraft rematerializes, we will be toast, Gustav explained. Oh, Eldris nodded in apprehension. Endrick, take command. Gustav suddenly got up and moved towards the back. Eldris' seat moved to the middle of the control panel, and he began to steer forward. At this moment, they had directly arrived before the net of energy, and just as it seemed like they were about to collide with it, atomic manipulation has been activated. Zien Gustav's whole figure emitted a milky glow that spread across the entirety of the spacecraft. Thwirch, the spacecraft flickered multiple times before dematerializing atom by atom. The spacecraft became see-through along with everyone within as they phased through the net of thronging destructive energy. The strings were passing through them like they were in astral form as they cruised through. Endrick navigated the spacecraft to increase in speed, while Gustav made sure to concentrate on keeping things this way. They still had a long way to go within this world of destructiveness, but couldn't deny that it looked quite amazing. The spark of colors and ripples of cosmic energy that merged into one another created a mesmerizing display for them to feast their eyes on. Chapter 1463, Hostility. Just like nets, there were little spaces in between, but were these spaces large enough for their spacecraft to fit? How is the spacecraft going to get through that? Rhea yelled in terror. It was very obvious that the little spaces were not wide enough for them to pass through without getting obliterated. To make matters worse, the throngs of violent torrents were moving and swimming, almost like they were alive. That's the trick. It can't, Gustav answered Rhea. Then how are we going to survive? Rhea didn't know what Gustav playing at, but he internally decided to curse Gustav if he said, "We want. We will." Gustav drove head on for it, unwavering in the slightest. Unlike Rhea, Eldris wasn't bothered because he had full trust in Gustav. However, he was just as intrigued as Rhea was about Gustav's plans. Can't we just hyper-jump through it? Eldris inquired. It won't work. The energy torrent is like strings. No matter how strong the hyperjump is, the moment it goes through, the violent energy will keep pulling it back to its center until it runs out of juice. Once that happens and the spacecraft rematerializes, we will be toast, Gustav explained. Oh, Eldris nodded in apprehension. Endrick, take command. Gustav suddenly got up and moved towards the back. Endrick's seat moved to the middle of the control panel, and he began to steer forward. At that moment, they directly arrived before the net of energy, and just as it seemed like they were about to collide with it, atomic manipulation has been activated. Zien Gustav's whole figure emitted a milky glow that spread across the entirety of the spacecraft. Thwirch, the spacecraft, flickered multiple times before dematerializing atom by atom. The spacecraft became see-through along with everyone within as they phased through the net of thronging destructive energy. The strings were passing through them like they were in astral form as they cruised through. Endrick navigated the spacecraft to increase in speed, while Gustav made sure to concentrate on keeping things the way they were. They still had a long way to go in this world of destructiveness, but couldn't deny that it looked quite amazing. The spark of colors and ripples of cosmic energy that merged into one another created a mesmerizing display for them to feast their eyes on. The endearing term beauty is dangerous had never been more true until that moment. Despite how marvelous the sight was, anyone and anything would be obliterated in an instant if they went close enough. The journey through the violent net of energy lasted for almost an entire day. By the time they successfully navigated through, Gustav had expended a lot of energy. Fortunately, they were now in the clear, so it was all worth it. We're out of the dead man zone. Gustav let out a heavy breath after announcing. That was both enlightening and terrifying at the same time. Rhea stated, slightly mesmerized. I agree. Truly never felt anything like that in all my life. All those colors. Eldris voiced, with a look of interest. He wished he could have absorbed them, but he knew it would mess with their navigation, so he couldn't risk it. At least it's going to be smooth sailing henceforth, Endrick stated from up ahead. "I'm not so sure about that," Gustav suddenly voiced with an ominous tone. "Huh? What is that? Is that a—" "Yes, it's a person," Gustav confirmed their suspicions on what lay in front of them. Hundreds of kilometers before their spacecraft was a figure floating in outer space without so much as a space gear or anything to help them breathe. They just floated in place with glowing crimson hair that looked like the branches of a tree. The person commanded their attention because of the multiple traits, but Gustav wasn't interested in knowing who they might be. He pushed the throttle forward after the spacecraft engines cooled a bit, causing them to sail in a straight line with immense speed. Common sense told them that a being floating and breathing in space with glowing hair wasn't a weak person. It was better to leave immediately than to be sorry later. In just an instant, they had crossed light years of distance, leaving the unknown far behind. Or so they thought. Din, 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 din. Hostile force in pursuit, squinting eyes face, activating energy shield, alarms suddenly began blurring within the spacecraft as a silver-colored energy shield appeared around it. "What the hell?" Rhea yelled in shock. "It's that person." Endrick stared at the holographic projection that displayed the rear position of their spacecraft. Not too distant behind them was a crimson blur streaking across space with unparalleled speed. Upon closer look, the crimson blur turned out to be the same person they had spotted after getting out of the dead man's zone. Endrick and Rhea couldn't believe their eyes as they saw how quickly the humanoid-shaped being was flying. They were moving faster than the speed of light, and yet it was starting to catch up with them. Whoever it was, they were definitely no ordinary being. Gustav couldn't chase a spacecraft and catch up to it at his current level of strength, so the person was no doubt more powerful. Only Miss Amy could successfully pull something like that off. "Buckle up," Gustav yelled while tapping on multiple buttons at a time. He was preparing to activate hyperjump, since it was becoming difficult to outrun the being currently in pursuit. "What if the person is friendly?" Rhea questioned from behind. "Maybe I can kick you out so you two can have a friendly chat then. Far from the rest of us," Gustav retorted with all seriousness. "Silence. I don't know what he wants, but I certainly don't want to stick around to find out," Eldris stated. "Me neither," Gustav added. "Jump now," Endrick suddenly yelled. Gustav didn't need to be told twice before he pushed the hyperjump button, seeing their spacecraft suddenly pivoted forward like a needle cutting through the fabric of space. They vanished in the next moment and reappeared in another part of space, completely void of the presence of the crimson being. "That's a day-worth journey." Gustav announced that they had put a lot of distance between themselves and the hostel, "so we can get to our destination in 4 days then." Rhea questioned. "That is right. I was hoping we wouldn't have to use hyperjump, but it couldn't be helped this time." Gustav mumbled. "I wonder who that person is, and what their objective could be." Eldris bore an expression of contemplation as he spoke. "SJ," Gustav called out. Zing. SJ appeared in the middle of the spacecraft, gleaming intensely. A red robe materialized into existence and covered its surface to dim the immense brightness. "Did you get a clear view?" Gustav questioned. SJ proceeded to create a holographic screen for everyone to see. On the screen was a clear image of the being they had just encountered. Its full structure was on display for them to see. "It's one of the faceless." I should have known. Gustav nearly face-bombed. "The faceless?" Eldris and Rhea voiced with puzzled looks. "One of 3 beings who are the last of their kind in the entire universe," Endrick briefly explained. "Are they, like, very strong?" Rhea questioned. "Obviously. All 3 of them have been in existence for a millennium, and since they are rare, they have tried siring more of their species for a long time to no avail," Endrick added. "So, what would they want with us?" Rhea asked. More like what would they want with him? Eldris turned to Gustav's direction. Huh? Rhea was still confused. The thing is, one of them is so obsessed with bearing more of their species that they would take any job, so long as the reward gave information on the subject of interest. They could be killers, saviors, fighters, protectors. Endrick paused at that point. Or even bounty hunters, Eldris chipped in. Yes, or even bounty hunters. So long as whatever the reward is has information regarding what they require to create new offspring, it makes it very rare for them to accept any job, not because millions of people across the galaxy aren't trying to acquire their assistance on personal matters, but because meeting their requirements is borderline impossible, Endrick kept explaining. Which means someone must have met their requirements this time, most likely someone from the Alliance, Eldris added in understanding. But how did they find us? It was almost like that faceless one knew we were coming. It was waiting for us. Eldris wasn't the only one interested in the answer to the question. Rhea was just as curious. You see, the abilities of a faceless one is, how do I put it? Endrick paused while holding his chin. Unpredictable, Gustav stated. Yes, unpredictable, Endrick nodded. How so? Eldris asked. Endrick stood to his feet and pointed at the holographic projection that displayed the faceless image. Notice the branch-like hair? Chapter 1464. Keep looking in the vast, unending expanse of space, where stars and galaxies weave together a twinkling display of the cosmos. A singular, faceless being floats in place. This entity, unlike any known creature, boasts a mane of vivid crimson hair that cascades and branches out like the limbs of an ancient tree, each strand glowing with the life force of the universe. Amidst the celestial silence, it performs a dance as old as time, conjuring visions with graceful movements. The space around this being warps and pulses with unseen energies, as if reality itself bends to its will. Before it, a single strand of crimson hair, identical in hue to its own ethereal locks, floats as a focus for its powers. This hair acts as a conductor, a focal point through which the being channels the display of visions. As the being's unseen eyes fixate on this floating strand, the space around it begins to shimmer and change. Visions emerge from the void, enveloping the strand like a series of transparent, floating screens. Each footage depicts a dirty blonde-haired target, though the nature of this target remains obscure to any observer, known only to the being itself. These images flicker and shift, displaying moments past, present, and potential futures, all centered around the being's interest. The scenes vary wildly. One moment, the target might be traversing the desolate corners of a distant planet. The next, they might be engaged in a heated debate within the metallic walls of a spacefaring vessel. Each footage is a vignette, a window into a life or event that holds significance in the grand design of the being's intentions. With a subtle movement, almost imperceptible, the being manipulates the scenes, zooming in on details or rewinding actions, as if searching for something. The crimson hair before it seems to pulse with light, reacting to each adjustment and shift in focus, intensifying as the being's concentration deepens. Eventually, the being finds what it seeks within the footages, a moment or clue critical to its inscrutable goals. With a gesture, all the visions dissipate, fading back into the darkness from whence they came, leaving only one of them, as well as the strand of crimson hair floating before the being. It proceeds to grab the strand while the last vision enlarged before it like a doorway. The form of the faceless suddenly blurs as it moves through dimensions unseen, leaving behind a trail of questions and the lingering echo of its presence in the vast, star-filled void. Stop being worried. We already put another day's worth of distance between us, Gustav said to Rhea, while steering their spacecraft through the dark expanse. Big brother, Endrick suddenly voiced with an alarming tone. What is it? Gustav questioned with a look of confusion. Swerve, He yelled in response, causing Gustav to veer the spacecraft towards the left. It tilted in such a sharp and unexpected way that Rhea's strap ripped off, and he got sent flying to the far end of the spacecraft. At the same instant Gustav swerved, space collapsed around their initial spot. With the collapse came the appearance of a faceless being with crimson branch-like hair. It turned out that Endrick had already seen a premonition of collision, so he changed their course before it could happen. He is back. What the hell? Eldris and Rhea both yelled at the same time in disbelief. I put a lot of distance between us. How did he? Gustav was just as confused as the rest of them. You need to use the hyper jump now, Endrick voiced with an incredibly troubled look. Gustav didn't question him about what he might have seen and swiftly charged up the hyper jump. Tuhush, compared to the last time, the Faceless One pursuit was much faster. He was closing in on the spacecraft more furiously, as though wondering how his plans keep getting messed up. When he was close to making contact, the Gustav pushed the hyperjump button. Just like the last time, they ripped through space like a needle, crossing a distance impossible to scale in a short amount of time. In a couple of seconds, they arrived in an entirely different location within space. Phew, we got away, Eldris muttered. You think? Rhea voiced with a tone of trepidation. Not for long, I think. Gustav shook his head. I don't know how it keeps finding us. And there is no way he should be able to cross such a distance within a short amount of time. Not even Jack or Miss Amy can do that, Endrick pointed out with a distressed tone. The Faceless are not supposed to be able to get the same ability twice in a row after consuming a fruit. It must have another way of doing this, Gustav analyzed with a look of skepticism. So, what are we going to do? Rhea questioned. We should only be 2 days away from our destination now. Maybe we can get there before he pulls another one of these stunts. Gustav's mind was still majorly centered on saving Angie. Look, Gus, I want to save Angie and Falco as much as you do, but I think we need to find a way to shake him off our tail permanently, or we might never get our chance to save them, Eldris voiced from behind. Inasmuch as Guys, Rhea suddenly called out to them. What is it? They all voiced simultaneously. Isn't that? I think I saw that space rock or planet, what not before. He pointed at a red-hot, glowing orbital body in the distance. The others turned to stare in the direction he pointed, and their eyes widened. We've been here before, Gustav stated with a tone of realization. What exactly is going on? Rhea voiced as an ominous feeling spread through the spacecraft. We just got set back by 5 days. Endrick stood to his feet and pointed at the holographic projection that displayed the faceless image. Notice the branch-like hair? He questioned. Yeah, what about it? Rhea voiced. You see, their hair is actually a tree. Over time, it has been called many names. The tree of creation, the tree of birth, the tree of life, and so on. Rhea kept staring at Endrick with a look of curiosity, wondering where he was headed with this. The thing is, this tree can bear fruits. When they pluck one of these fruits and consume them, it grants a random ability for a particular duration. One, Endrick got to this point. Rhea's mouth was agape. So you're saying that they can technically make use of any ability? Rhea inquired. Yes, but not just that. They get the random ability scaled to a very high level depending on the age of the Faceless One. And these ones are pretty old, so you can already guess just how strong an ability will be when they gain them. Not to mention that it sticks for an even longer duration with them, Endrick added with a grave tone. So, this Faceless One must have gained an ability that helped them locate us, Eldris mumbled with a look of understanding. It makes sense now. Rhea leaned back with a bothered look. But what happens when they run out of time? With abilities like that, they must be getting jumped all the time. I mean, who wouldn't want to eat a fruit that would give you a random ability? Rhea thought about the possibilities. You'll die if you ate from one of the fruits on their hair, Endrick pointed out. What? Rhea's eyes widened. It only works for them. Should someone else try to eat a fruit from them, they would explode to pieces and die. Endrick iterated. Rhea felt like Endrick had just bursted his bubble. He couldn't help but think it was such a waste. If he or she or it found us before, they can certainly find us again. So what do we do? Rhea asked. They won't find us before we get Falco and Angie out of there. We can be 2 galaxies away after we get that done, Gustav answered from up ahead. Yeah, but we can't keep running. Can we? This is a faceless one we're talking about, Endrick voiced from the side. It was a lot of trouble having what was considered one of the strongest beings in the universe chasing after you. At least it isn't the one with cosmic superiority, Gustav chuckled. Wait, one of them has that cosmic thing like you? One could almost spell the look of doom on Rhea's face as he questioned. Go figure, Gustav replied. We're screwed. No, we're not. Gustav has a plan, I'm sure. Rhea, Endrick, and Eldris voiced simultaneously. If I can trigger another meeting, maybe I can talk to the other faceless to get the one chasing us to back off, Gustav stated, but they didn't really get what he meant. Just keep your pants in a bunch till we're done dealing with the Angie and Falco situation, Gustav added. Chapter 1465, You Cannot Take Him Do Not Unlock, Yet Karis, tell me where the Ryan is, he demanded, his voice echoing slightly in the memory-filled void. Karis lifted her weary eyes to meet his, a spark of defiance still burning within. I can't tell you, Velos. I won't let you destroy what I've planned. The law's frustration was palpable, but he masked it quickly and tried a different angle. Why deny me of my share? This was never the plan, so stop being selfish. Karis shook her head slowly, her voice soft but firm. The Nereus sector cursed me. It made me a criminal. I blame this place for the loss of my child. I won't let anyone else suffer, as I have. What I'm doing with the Ryan will make sure nothing like this is repeated. Just leave the Nereus sector for your own sake. The low scoffed as his patience wore thin. Tell me where the Ryan is, Karis. This is not a game. Her resolve hardened as she repeated her refusal. No, Velos. I must finish what I started. At that moment, Velos burst into laughter, a sound that seemed jarringly out of place in the somber atmosphere. Karis stared at him, confusion and surprise written across her face. Velos, catching his breath, waved his hand dismissively. I don't need you to tell me, Karis. Look around you. As he spoke, the memories swirling around them began to shift. The images of past tragedies and struggles faded, replaced by more recent memories. Karis watched, horror-struck, as scenes of her arrival in the Nereus sector with the Ryan played out around them. The memories showed where she had headed, whom she had contacted, and even where she had hidden the Ryan, all displayed vividly in the shimmering dimension. Karis' eyes widened with realization and dread. How? The lost smile was thin and cold. You see, Karis, the mind, no matter how strong, starts to crack under constant reliving of grief. It opens doors, makes it easy to navigate to the memories I want to see. Your plan, your contacts, the Ryan's location. I know it all now. Karis felt a chill run down her spine as the implications of the lost words sank in. Her last defense had been breached, her secrets laid bare, not by torture or threats, but by her own memories. Velos continued, his voice now a whisper that seemed to fill the space. You thought you could outsmart everyone, didn't you? Use the Ryan to your satisfaction? But you're just a pawn, Karis. And now I hold the board. Karis, now realizing the extent of her vulnerability, felt a mixture of anger and desperation. You think you've won. Velos? Velos nodded slowly, his expression serious. Yes, I have, and I will. The Ryan will be mine, and with it, I will choose to do whatever I please. As the revelation hung heavy between them, Kara's mind raced for solutions, ways to salvage her plan. But with every option seeming to slip through her fingers, her situation felt increasingly hopeless. The Los, satisfied with the shock and defeat on Kara's face, began to fade from the dimension, his parting words echoing around her. "Goodbye, Karis. SSS, I cannot let you take him," Gustav stated while grabbing the unconscious clone. However, in the next moment, a star-patterned construct appeared around the body, causing it to vanish. "Sorry, but you can't stop me," Mac responded while the unconscious body appeared beside him in midair. "Damn it," Gustav gritted his teeth before leaping into the air. Thwoosh, heavy wind blasted in every direction as the ground of the forest cracked and trees swayed to the side from the intensity of Gustav's speed. Mac, who had already turned away to leave, was taken by surprise as the figure in the fox-like mask, who he didn't know was the real Gustav, appeared beside him in just a split second. Gustav immediately reached out to grab the clone protected by the triangular star-shaped construct, and from the corner of his eye he caught the slight astonishment on Mac's face. However, Mac was much faster as he pulled the floating unconscious clone away and thrust his right palm forward. Bang! Gustav was met with a violent clash as his entire body was sent flying across the air upon collision. "Don't push me," Mac warned after attacking with no intent to inflict gracious injuries. He turned around and flew forward with the floating unconscious body beside him, but didn't get very far before a red streak blazed across the sky. "Looks like I might need to knock him out," Mac decided while turning around swiftly. Gustav's figure appeared right before him with his arm outstretched once more. "Space construct," Mac chimed before Gustav could make contact. Triangular star-shaped enclosures suddenly appeared around Gustav's figure, and he instantly found himself unable to move. Damn it. The space left Gustav completely incapacitated. There was only one way he knew he could get out of it, but he couldn't go through with it because he would be risking exposing his identity. "Chaos construct," Mac voiced while pointing at the sky. A massive, glowing, purplish circle with multiple triangular shapes covered the sky and blotted the view of the entire sun. Gustav was frozen in place, but he could sense the incredible pressure from the sky. In the next instant, a powerful torrent of purplish energy rained from the sky like a waterfall. It charged downwards with immense speed and power, slamming into Gustav's frozen figure. Bang! It rained down upon the forest, which was as large as a town, racing everything in view to the ground. The fire was unable to breed because, in just a second, the entire vicinity was turned into a charred wasteland. The trees were gone along with rocks, grasses, highlands, mountains, and almost every atom in view. All that remained in view was a massive, darkened surface with molten lava in some areas. "Judging by your strength, that won't be enough to kill you, but at the very least you won't be a nuisance anymore," Max said before turning away, once more, and flying into the distance. "Those geezers better not complain about the destruction." "Teach," he grumbled. Down beneath the pile of ash and molten liquid, a figure sprouted out of the surface with a sizzling cooked flesh. Reddish marks could be seen all over his burnt skin and hair as he raised his face to stare at the sky. Powerful indeed. The figure voiced with a tone of aspiration. "You've done it now," he added while his body began to visibly regenerate at very insane speed. Silver scales started appearing all over his body as the space around him twisted and violent winds stirred. Horns protruded from his head as energy gathered around him, and he ascended from the surface of the decimated environment. Thrih, his figure suddenly vanished like he teleported, and in the next instant, a loud, ripping sound rang out heavily. Grrhhhhhhh. The surroundings quaked with intensity as a massive line was torn in the skies. People across multiple cities in the world looked up to the sky and could see the line that cut across it. Their faces were fraught with clueless expressions, but the sound wave that came next made them cover their ears in horror. Thra! It sounded like 1,000 thunderbolts merged into one, ringing before each person's ear. Some of them already had blood leaking from their eardrums. They didn't know that what was coming next would be even worse. A few seconds earlier. Huh? Mac turned in midair as he sensed something. Nature cons. Before he could complete his sentence, the skies ripped open with rifts appearing all over. It sounded like thousands of loud explosions went off as an incredibly quick streak rammed heavily into Mac. Both figures tore across the sky at such insane speed that more rifts appeared in their wake. Mac was completely astounded as he tried to free himself from the figure that clung to him with unprecedented grip. "How are you still conscious?" Mac voiced as he held onto Gustav's arms and began slowly spreading them. When he noticed he was losing hold, Gustav spun repeatedly and flung Mac away. Fwai-hi-hi. Mac found himself catapulting downwards at a speed that not a single mixed blood would be able to follow. Before he could try to stabilize himself, he slammed into the surface of an ocean, causing a massive torrent to blast upwards. Boom! It was as though another explosion had gone off as Mac hit the bottom of the ocean instantly. A cyclone was generated as a radius of more than 50,000 feet was cleared of water, and walls of ocean waves spread to other areas. Mac broke through the ocean bed and continuously kept falling further underground from the force of the throw. The clone's unconscious body, which still had triangular-shaped star constructs around it, was flying toward the ocean when Gustav grabbed it forcefully. "Gotta put this in my personal space," he voiced with a struggling tone as he tightened his hand around the construct in a bid to break through it and retrieve the clone's body. Unfortunately, the construct seemed unbreakable despite the amount of pressure Gustav inflicted on it. "I have no choice but to use it." Gustav could only pray that it didn't get noticed as a stack of multicolored rhombuses phased out of his left palm area. "Try just the construct," Gustav instructed. In the next instant, the construct was consumed by Cohelia, leaving Gustav's unconscious clone untouched. Gustav reached out to grab the clone before it could fall, but before he made contact with it, a yellow streak came out of nowhere and snatched the clone from him. "Damn it, I wasn't fast enough." Gustav gritted his teeth. Mac had the clone in his grasp as he appeared hundreds of feet away from Gustav. I cannot ignore your level of strength, even though it is beneath mine." Someone as powerful as you are will not be able to go unnoticed, since there are not a lot of mixed bloods on this level of strength. "Who are you?" Mac questioned with a perceptible tone of interest, although Gustav's demon fox-like mask had been disintegrated when Mac attacked earlier. One still couldn't tell how he looked at the moment. This was because Gustav activated Ultimate Combination, which had completely altered his human look. "I am nobody," Gustav answered with the same fake middle-aged voice he had been using all this time. "Who knows? I might just leave the kid to you if you revealed who you are." Mac grinned lightly while proposing. "No, you wouldn't," Gustav said internally, and he was right. Who, in their right senses, would let go of the original and a clone at the same time? "I will no longer take your acts lightly if you keep this up," knowing he couldn't get Gustav to spill the beans. Mac warned heavily. "Just give him back, and I will be out of your way." Gustav remained unyielding as well. "I can't do that," Mac stated. Spack. Before he could completely cast any ability, Gustav moved like a lightning bolt. Thraz. He arrived before Mac in an instant while throwing out a glowing, icy fist. "This will be very damaging if I don't evade or counter." Mac was a bit faster, but he knew he only had two choices at this moment, since complete evasion while holding onto the clone was impossible. Fwai. He let go of the clone and raised his right arm to block Gustav's attack while arching his left arm backward to thrust a counterpalm strike at Gustav's gut. Boom. A loud crash that reverberated across the entirety of the earth rang out as Gustav's fist collided with Mac's arm. Mac's face barely displayed an affected look as his palm rammed into Gustav's knee at the same moment. Gustav had raised his knee to block the palm strike, and now they had both hit each other with enough force to split the earth in two. Boom. The entirety of the earth quaked intensely as they were both sent catapulting backward. He tricked me. That attack was much more powerful than I sensed. Chapter 1466, The Planet Destroyer. Perhaps dying isn't such a bad option, so long as that treacherous bitch gets to join in. The low spat out, his disdain for Karis evident in his sneer. Gustav's response was measured, his tone icy as he leaned in closer. Don't test my patience, the Los. Release Karis so she can deactivate the Ryan. I've been awfully understanding and nice these days. You don't want to see the other side. The Los, clenching his fists, shot back. And why would I do that? If I'm going down, I want the Ryan in the end. Without that, there's no deal. Gustav's expression darkened. Listen carefully. With the little time we have left, I can make your life a living hell. I can save you from the destruction only to dedicate the rest of your days to torturing you until you beg for death as a relief, and I will not grant it. The threat hung heavy in the air, Gustav's words echoing with a chilling promise. The Los, looking into Gustav's relentless eyes, felt a shiver run down his spine. There was no bluff in Gustav's gaze, only the cold certainty of his intentions. Was he powerful enough to handle it? Recalling all he had witnessed these last couple of days, he doubted it. Initially he thought Gustav and the others were just ordinary people that had saved him, but he knew very well now that they were far from being ordinary, especially after finding out about Gustav's identity. After a tense moment, the Los swallowed hard, his earlier bravado crumbling under the weight of Gustav's resolve. All right, they'll do it. Just, spare me. Gustav nodded curtly, signaling to an operative who handed the Los a small, reflective surface, a portal device. With a resigned sigh, the Los took the device, his hands slightly trembling as he summoned Karis from the dimensional void she was trapped in. The air shimmered as Karis was pulled through the reflective portal, her form solidifying in the real world. She looked around, disoriented for a moment before her gaze hardened upon seeing the Los and Gustav. The urgency of the situation brought them to the site where the Ryan was embedded, its glow pulsating ominously. The operatives, along with Vlade Zenith, stood back as Gustav led Karis to the crystalline structure. Karis, you're the only one who can deactivate this, Gustav stated. Karis, her expression unreadable, surveyed the Ryan. The burden of her decision weighed visibly on her shoulders. After a moment's hesitation, she shook her head. No. The single word fell like a hammer. Gustav's brow furrowed, his patience fraying. Why won't you deactivate the Ryan? You really want innocent folks, children, to lose their lives, just like how your baby lost its? Karis' eyes met Gustav's as a flurry of emotions flickered through. That is not it. I am trying to save them, and the potential many others that may fall into such a disastrous situation. When the Nereus sector is no more, so will their suffering. This will only bring salvation. The Los interjected, anger lacing his tone. You'd risk everything for your ideals? You're as mad, as they say. Karis turned to face the Los, her gaze steely. And you'd sell us all out for a chance at power. We're different, the Los. I'm trying to save lives, as opposed to your selfish ass. Gustav stepped between them. No, you're trying to take them. There can be other better ways of saving them. Do you really believe this is the only path? Karis sighed, the weight of the world seeming to press down upon her. There is no other way. The Nereus sector is full of rotten criminals. Their death will make the universe a better place. Other innocents won't fall into their hand once the charge goes off. Zenith, who had been silent, now spoke up. If I had known of our baby, I would have done better. As much rotten as I am, I don't believe those kids should suffer the same fate as the ones you wish to punish. You are not giving them the chance to be saved or live a potential life different from how you did. What if there is hope for them and you end up snuffing it out with this? The question hung in the air, unanswered as Karis pondered the gravity of her next actions. Gustav knew that persuading her would take more than threats or pleas. It would require understanding and perhaps aligning with her deeper motivations. You want the kingpins and crime lords gone, right? Gustav broke the silence, his voice steady, eyes locked on Karis' conflicted gaze. Karis, taken aback by the simplicity of the question, responded with a hint of frustration. Of course, that's why we're here. This, she gestured to the glowing Ryan, is the only way to cleanse the sector once and for all. Gustav shook his head slightly, a thoughtful look crossing his features. It's not the only way. There are other paths, ones that don't involve taking innocent lives. Karis' eyes narrowed, skepticism written across her face. And what would you know of it? I can help you achieve that. I have the power, Gustav stated. Puffed. You? What can you do? Where does such unruly confidence come from? Karis nearly bursted out in laughter as deeds of the powerful crime lords appeared in her mind. It's because I am Gustav Crimson, the planet destroyer. As the Alliance calls me, Gustav revealed, his title hanging heavy in the air. He didn't elaborate on his past deeds, but the weight of his reputation was evident. Karis stepped back, her shock apparent. You're him? She murmured, piecing together rumors and stories she'd heard of the infamous fugitive. Yes, Gustav affirmed, you have no doubt heard of some of my feats. Does any of your crime lords compare? Karis didn't need to answer because the look on her face already did. You're just as bad, or even worse. Why would I deactivate the Ryan after your revelation? Karis inquired with a frightened look. Karis, still processing the revelation, looked from Gustav to the Ryan and back. You're a planet destroyer, yet you speak of saving lives. Gustav's expression softened. I've been called many things, Karis. Not all are true, and not all are unfounded. Iram wanted to step in and speak on behalf of Gustav based on all he had seen so far, but Gustav stopped him. He leaned closer to Karis before responding. Sometimes you need a monster to get rid of other monsters. Karis' mouth hung open as she couldn't find the words to refute. For some reason, Gustav's statement made a lot of sense, even though she was supposed to be terrified of such a presence. But I need you to trust me, deactivate the Ryan, and let us handle this without catastrophe. Finally, she nodded, her decision made. I don't know why I am trusting a planet destroyer, but he'll do it. Turning to the Ryan, Karis approached the crystalline structure. She placed her hands on its surface, her fingers tracing the complex patterns that emitted a soft blue light. Whispering words of deactivation, she began the process. The glow of the Ryan slowly dimmed, the pulsating energy ebbing away as Karis' chant continued. Around them, the atmosphere shifted, the imminent threat receding with each passing second. As the light of the Ryan faded to a mere flicker and then extinguished, a collective sigh of relief swept through the room. The Triton guards, led by Officer Iram, stepped forward. With professionalism and precision, they secured the now inert Ryan, placing it within a specialized containment unit designed to safeguard such powerful mineral. Thank you, Gustav, for your intervention, Officer Iram said, offering a nod of respect to Gustav. Well, take it from here. The Ryan will be kept under maximum security. As they prepared to escort Karis and the Los away, Karis gave Gustav a long, searching look. I hope you keep to your word, Gustav, she said quietly, a mix of hope and uncertainty in her voice. Gustav nodded in acknowledgement. I will, but too bad. You won't be around to see it. In the aftermath of the crisis with the Ryan, Rhea approached Gustav with an inquisitive gaze. So, what's next? He asked. Gustav turned to him with a smirk, his eyes glinting with a fierce resolve that had become all too familiar. It's time for heads to roll, he declared, his tone suggesting a looming storm about to be unleashed. As Iram and the Triton guards organized their exit from the nearest sector, Gustav quickly laid out his plans. He assigned tasks to each of them, focusing on strategic strikes against the criminal underbelly of the sector in a bid to keep his word to Karis. Eldris and Falco, he said, I need you two to coordinate the extraction of trafficked alien kids. Get them to safety, set up a secure channel for medical and psychological support. No loose ends. Endrick, Rhea. He instructed, start dismantling the slave markets, free those held against their will, and ensure they have a passage to safe havens. I don't have to say. Use force if necessary, because it will be, but keep casualties to a minimum. Chapter 1467, the update, do not unlock, not according to recent data. Another officer shook their head while putting up a bunch of holographic statistics. The meeting seemed to be split between two sides. One side was with General Chell, while the other side disagreed with him. Grand Commander Cheyenne, what is your take on this? Commander Zenatus said to middle-aged-looking man with a diamond shard in his forehead, enough with the bickering. The Grand Commanders will come to a decision on this later. For now, this meeting is adjourned, Grand Commander Cheyenne stated with an authoritative tone. Minutes after the meeting came to an end, General Chell approached Grand Commander Cheyenne. We need to make a move now, or we are going to lose Gustav to the Draconids, he stated. What do you mean by that? Grand Commander Cheyenne inquired with a suspicious expression. They employed a very powerful entity to capture him, who, amidst the serenity of space, where stars twinkle like distant lighthouses guiding the wanderers of the cosmos, a spacecraft, its design unconventional with a distinct pentagon shape, could be spotted floating in place. Atop this vessel were two remarkable-looking figures. The first figure, an individual with curly black hair, floats slightly above the vessel. On his forehead, a green glowing that pulsates with an ethereal light, marking him as someone of significant power and mystique. Around him, an aura of formidable energy emanates, pushing against the very fabric of space, distorting the area around him with an invisible force. His eyes are focused, reflecting a resolve that is both calming and intimidating. Beside him, the second figure, with dirty blonde hair, exudes a different kind of significance. This individual carries a weight in their demeanor, a target of unimaginable value. It is this figure that beckons the extraordinary, drawing forth the presence of divinity. Without warning, space before the spacecraft distorts, a rippling effect that heralds the arrival of the entity with crimson, tree-like hair. It materializes with a silent grace, floating before the vessel, its hair billowing in an unseen cosmic wind. The entity's appearance is mesmerizing, its hair glowing with a deep, rich hue that contrasts starkly against the backdrop of space. The moment of confrontation is electric, charged with an unseen tension that grips the void. Endrick's eyes remained close, almost like he was lost in a trance. Gustav reaches out to touch him, but the energy that emanates from Endrick's figure repels his hand. With the Epheve right before him, Gustav decides to make a last-minute decision. In a bold move, he launches himself into the vacuum of space, propelling away from the spacecraft in the opposite direction. His movement is swift, a desperate bid to draw the crimson-haired being away, sacrificing his safety since he seemed to be headed back for the dead man zone. The faceless one stands in place for a bit, seemingly confounded, but soon his gaze shifts, locking onto the fleeing figure with an intensity that belies its serene appearance. With a fluid motion, it gives chase, moving through space with an ease that defied physics. Ultimate combination has been activated. Gustav's figure morphed as he wove through asteroids and debris, pushing his limits in a desperate bid to outrun the faceless one, even though he knew it was impossible. His aim was to get Ephev as far away from the spacecraft as possible, so the others could get out of there, and the only chance he felt he had at achieving this was by heading back to the dead man zone that made it literally impossible for any being of matter to pass through. Fwish, they both transcend unimaginable speed as Ephev closes in on him. Meanwhile, back on the spacecraft, Endrick suddenly opens his eyes. "I found the focal point," he voices before blinking. Twiwi, he reappears within the spacecraft, which is already veering forward with Ealdris taking charge. "Where is Gustav?" Endrick inquires with a slightly befuddled look. "We need to get out of here now, or he won't be safe," Ealdris stated before powering up the hyperjump. Endrick's face lit up in realization as the recent events played out in his head. "Husarius, why didn't you tell me?" he yelled out. Breaking concentration would have prevented us from finding the focal point, Husarius answered without an ounce of remorse while the spacecraft turned into a line that streaked forward with intensity. On the outside, Gustav closed in on a massive net wriggling with violent throngs of energy. "I know what you are planning. I won't let you." The voice of the faceless one thrummed across space as it suddenly accelerated. Fusum, before Gustav could reach the net, Ephev reached him. Gustav tried to evade, but Ephev caught him by the neck and held him in place. Gustav struggled with a look of powerlessness. "Now I have you." His voice reached Gustav's hearing once more, even though he wasn't speaking. "Do you?" A smirk suddenly appeared on Gustav's face as he stared at a countdown. 1. A burst of sky-blue light suddenly emanates from his wrist, completely consuming his figure. Gustav vanished in the next moment, causing Ephev hand to close in on nothing. "No." Although Ephev was faceless, one could sense frustration in his voice as infuriating energy spread forth from his being. "I was trying to get Ephev off our back. That's the name of the faceless one after us, or specifically, after me," Gustav clarified. "Ephev, that's a weird name," Rhea stated bluntly. "You should hear the name of the cosmic superior faceless one." Gustav wondered what Rhea would call that if he knew of it. "I try to get him to help us take Ephev off our case," Gustav added. "Any luck with that?" Ealdris inquired. "Nah, he said he can't do that. It isn't the way of the faceless." "Whatever that means," Gustav responded. "Bummer," Rhea mumbled. "He mentioned something else." Gustav paused for a bit with a disturbed expression. "He said the reason Ephev keeps getting to us is because he has a piece of his hair," Gustav revealed. "What does his hair have to do with this?" Rhea questioned. "Cosmic superiority beings are linked, so he uses the cosmic strand to link us and locates us each time," Gustav explained. The looks of bewilderment on both Rhea and Ealdris' face were apparent after Gustav revealed this. "Is there any way we can get it from him?" Ealdris asked. "Even if we did, we would still have this loop problem." Gustav shook his head softly. "Isn't Endrick taking care of that at the moment?" Rhea said while looking around. "There is no guarantee that he will find it." A plan began formulating in Gustav's head after voicing this out. "I haven't." Before Gustav could complete his sentence, space pulsated rhythmically up ahead. They all turned to stare at the northeast direction in horror. "He's here," Ealdris stated. "Endrick!" Gustav yelled and vanished from viewpoint. Fuhum, he reappeared atop the spacecraft and reached out to grab Endrick, who was floating while emitting a powerful green glow from his figure. Earth, within a broad space, lay an exemplar of sophistication and high-class design. Its expansive dimensions are accentuated by the minimalist, yet opulent decor, where the interplay of natural light and shadows casts a serene ambience conducive to focused deliberation. The room is encased in panels of dark, rich mahogany, their polished surfaces reflecting the subdued lighting from the elegant, recessed ceiling fixtures, creating an atmosphere of warmth and exclusivity. At the heart of this boardroom lies a grand, elongated table, its surface a flawless expanse of gleaming jet-black marble. This imposing centerpiece commands respect, its sleek, reflective top mirroring the solemn expressions of those seated around it. Around this table, figures clad in authoritative uniforms convene, their attire a testament to their positions of power within the MBO. Medals and insignias, symbols of achievements and rank, glint under the soft lighting, adding a touch of solemnity and pride to the gathering. What is this talk about sending more of our officers to the Alliance? The officer backing the floor-to-ceiling window on one side offering a breathtaking view of the city skyline, voices in bafflement. It was requested by the Alliance in order to capture the fugitive Gustav Crimson. General Chell answered from the other end. They have enough forces. It is unwise for us to give more. Another general voiced his opinion. Other planets agreed. So it would be odd if we decided not to. General Chell responded. Yes, capturing Gustav Crimson should be #1 priority. Another officer agreed with General Chell. With all due respect, we have already put a lot of resources into capturing Gustav Crimson. At this point, we are starting to neglect that there are bigger issues to take care of right here on our planet, and not out there in the stars. Commander Xanatus, who was also present, stated with a respectful yet assertive tone. We have enough forces to handle whatever is on the ground just as much as what is in the sky, General Chell responded. Chapter 1468, can I? Do not unlock after a moment that seems both an instant and an eternity in the vast, timeless expanse of space. He extends his left hand toward the black hole. His arm does not tremble. Instead, it thrums with an energy that is both terrifying and beautiful in its intensity. Cohelia come forth. From his fingertips, a glow begins to emanate, spreading to engulf his hand in a spectrum of light that defies description. The colors blend and shift, radiating outwards in hues that human eyes have never seen and minds have never imagined. Suddenly, with a purpose that is as deliberate as it is mysterious, a succession of massive, rhombus-shaped lights bursts forth from his arm. These lights, each a different, vibrant color, phases into existence. They move with a synchrony that is both mesmerizing and purposeful, aligning themselves into a formation that is geometrically perfect and stunning in its complexity. As these colossal, multicolored rhombi cascade towards the black hole, space itself seems to warp and shimmer around them. They approach the event horizon, not with the hesitance of matter doomed to be devoured, but with the assurance of entities that command their own fate. In a spectacle that would render the most eloquent of poets speechless, the lights envelop the black hole, their brilliance challenging the darkness that has consumed all light. 10-10 as these colossal, multicolored rhombi cascade towards the black hole, space itself seems to warp and shimmer around them. They approach the event horizon, not with the hesitance of matter doomed to be devoured, but with the assurance of entities that command their own fate. In a spectacle that would render the most eloquent of poets speechless, the lights envelop the black hole, their brilliance challenging the darkness that has consumed all light. With a silent command that resonates through the very essence of reality, Gustav causes the lights to converge, their energy intensifying to a crescendo that outshines galaxies. In a moment of cosmic defiance, Cohelia rears its mouth in full form and swallows the black hole whole, enveloping it in a luminance that rewrites the laws of physics with its sheer will. And then, as suddenly as it began, the display ends. The black hole, that insatiable maw of destruction, vanishes without a trace, leaving behind a void where once stood a titan of the cosmos. The multicolored lights, having accomplished their unfathomable task, fade into the ether, their purpose fulfilled. Gustav lowers his hand, the glow dimming, then extinguishing, leaving no trace of the monumental power it had just channeled. All of a sudden, cracks began to appear all over the surroundings. It was like reality, and all of existence was cracking like fractured glass. Krryycchhhh. Gustav floated in place as these cracks ultimately spread across the entire vicinity and shatters. Blinking for a split second, Gustav finds himself in a different environment. "Gus, you listening?" A familiar voice called out to him from behind, causing him to turn around. Eldris and Rhea were strapped into the seats, and it seemed like they had been engaged in a conversation with him, while Endrick was seated towards his right within the spacecraft. "Oh, so it's over?" He looked forward upon noticing that they were cruising through space. Although Afiv was faceless, one could sense frustration in his voice as infuriating energy spread forth from his being. Gustav reappeared within the spacecraft, causing the others to let out a collective sigh of relief. "Good thing you managed to outrun him," Eldris muttered. "I didn't actually outrun him. He caught me, but it's good that he did." Gustav responded while holding on to a strand of crimson hair. "You got the hair from him? How?" Their faces bore looks of puzzlement. "Wasn't that difficult?" Gustav went on to explain how he sneaked his hand into Afiv's personal space at the last moment and pulled the hair out before vanishing. Gustav knew how to make spaces collapse, so this wasn't much of a difficulty for him. Fortunately, he activated the dimensional bracelet seconds prior to getting caught by Afiv, or things would have gone in a completely different direction. "Does this mean he won't be able to track us anymore?" Rhea questioned. "Yes, he won't," Gustav voiced in confirmation. "But we still have to get to the focal point and get rid of this loop," Eldris pointed out, receiving a nod from Gustav. "What happens if 5 days go by and we haven't managed to get rid of the loop? Does the hair go back to him when this whole thing resets, or—" Rhea asked with a look of bafflement. "Good question. Let's hope we get rid of the loop before then, so we don't have to find out," Gustav said before heading for the seat before the control panel. "Bad news, though. The focal point is that way, so we will have to turn around," Endrick voiced while pointing towards the south. "You mean we have to go back there?" Rhea asked with a horrific tone. "Not entirely, but we do need to turn around if we want to get to where it is located," Endrick answered while displaying a wry smile. "We're dead," Rhea mumbled while shaking his head. "Relax, we can count on the fact that he is trying to come after us again, but he doesn't know where to look, so he could be anywhere right now," Gustav said to Rhea. "That does make me feel less worried," Rhea stated. "Let's just go around like clockwise. Might take longer to get there, but we'd have lesser chances of bumping into him," Eldris suggested. "I'll take you up on that." Gustav proceeded to steer the spacecraft around and began flying in the eastern direction. The engines emit a faint, pulsing glow, propelling it forward on a course set towards a new destination. For over 12 hours, the spacecraft continues its relentless traverse across the vast expanse of space. Inside, Gustav and the others make plans on how to deal with things should any unexpected situation arise. As the journey continues, the spacecraft skirts through edges of gas giants, behemoths of swirling colors and storms that could swallow the vessel whole without a trace. Each obstacle is navigated with a mixture of skill and technology, the ship's advanced navigation systems plotting a safe passage through these cosmic hazards. Finally, the destination looms ahead, emerging from the darkness like a vision from the depths of the most daring imaginations. In the distance, a black hole reveals itself, a monstrous entity suspended in the void, its gravitational pull bending light itself into a mesmerizing halo around its event horizon. This celestial phenomenon, a singularity, where the known laws of physics contort and break, casts an awe-inspiring, if not ominous, presence. The spacecraft slows its approach, its engines dialing back the thrust to a gentle hum as it enters a cautious orbit around the black hole. Gustav and the others gathered at the observation windows and screens, watching in silent reverence as the spectacle unfolds before them. The black hole's accretion disk, a swirling maelstrom of matter being inexorably drawn into the abyss, glows with a fierce, ethereal beauty. "You're saying the focal point is a black hole?" Gustav questioned with a look of disbelief. "That is exactly what I am saying," Endrich answered. "This is crazy. What do we do to a black hole to get rid of the loop? Destroy it?" Rhea voiced sarcastically. They all turned to stare at him with looks of seriousness. The smile on his face instantly dropped. "You guys are kidding, right?" Rhea voiced in disbelief. "The focal point is within the black hole, so that monster is powerful enough to enter a black hole and activate a 5-day loop that spans across hundreds of light years without as much as breaking a sweat." Endrich began explaining. "So unless someone can go into the black hole and get rid of the focal point without any adverse effect, then it's the only choice we have. Or are you perhaps offering to go into the black hole and get the job done?" Endrich asked him. "You want me to perish?" "I'll pass on that." Rhea decided to keep his mouth shut at this point. "Going in there is also a feasible option," Gustav voiced from the side as he peered at the abysmal swirling darkness. "But it's a much easier to just get rid of it," he added while turning around to head out. "So that's it? You're just going to go out there and get rid of an entire black hole?" Rhea was still in disbelief. "Pretty much," Gustav answered without turning around. "You should know what he is capable of by now." Eldris patted Rhea's back while chuckling. "Would you be able to do that?" Rhea asked him. "I wouldn't know since I've never tried it," Eldris voiced in response while they watched Gustav reappear ahead of the spacecraft. He flew in the direction of the dark mass unfettered. At this moment, his dirty blonde hair captures the light of distant suns, his undeniable aura of divinity, an almost ethereal quality that seems out of place amidst the cold, impersonal expanse of the cosmos, beams forth as he floats serenely before one of space's most awe-inspiring and terrifying phenomena, a black hole. The black hole itself, a boundary beyond which nothing can escape, pulses with the last echoes of light from matter being inexorably drawn inward. Against this backdrop of ultimate destruction, Gustav observes, his gaze intense yet unfazed, as if understanding the very essence of the cosmic existence before him. Chapter 1469, The Epicenter Do Not Unlock, Not Exactly is Going On? Rhea asked with a look of bafflement. "It means we're almost there. We're almost at the center of the universe," Endrich voiced with a tone of certainty. "I suspected something like this might happen," Gustav muttered while pushing his hand forward. A strange force kept contending with his palm movement. It makes sense why no one has ever been able to tell any tale about reaching the middle of the universe or why there is no mention of the planet there. He added, "Because whenever spacecraft get to this point, they go around it," Eldris muttered with a tone of realization. "And I'm guessing they can't see it either, so no one ever really tried to get past," Gustav stated while squinting his eyes. "See it?" Rhea voiced in confusion. Far into the distance was the outline of a planet, darkened and desolate, its surface a testament to ages of desiccation and decay. This planet, hidden from the prying eyes of the universe, exists in isolation, its presence known to none, for it is invisible to all. Instead of responding, Gustav gazes out into the void and sees what no other can: the darkened planet suspended in the heart of repulsion from their current position. It was as distant as Mars from Earth, but since they were in space, the outline was visible to Gustav. However, it was just him and not the others. "I can see it." Gustav proceeds to describe the planet in vivid detail, his eyes seeing through the cosmic veil that renders it invisible to others. Is there a reason why you can see it, and we can't? Rhea questioned in confoundment. Perks of being the outworldly, I guess, Eldris voiced from the side. The mundane one did mention that it was going to be invisible to the eyes except for specific periods, which is also when we will get the chance to get onto the planet, because it is also intangible while it is invisible. Endrick chimed in from the side. Did he mention that the repulsion will stop too? Or do we have to get close to the planet first? Eldris inquired. He didn't specify, but IDs say it's better safe than sorry to be closer to it when the time comes. Endrick responded with a grave tone. With the spacecraft unable to breach the invisible repellent force, the group had to come up with ways to infiltrate. Gustav sat down once again before the control panels and pushed the hyper jump button. He decided not to power it fully so it wouldn't take them beyond the specific perimeter. After a few moments, he pushed the throttle. The spacecraft rumbled intensely as it turned into a needle-like streak that pushed forward with unprecedented tenacity. It soon returned to normal, giving them visuals of the surroundings once more. Did we get past in? Rhea inquired. Nope, we're still where we were, Endrick responded with a disturbed look. From the looks of things, it is impossible to move in a straight line beyond this point. Gustav shook his head. Then what do we do? Rhea questioned. I don't think the spacecraft will be any use to us in this situation. Gustav stood to his feet. Come on, let's head out, he added while heading for the exit. Eldris and Rhea grabbed a spacesuit, since they couldn't breathe in space, while Endrick and Gustav headed out without issues. In a bit, they were floating before the endless void of space, ready to take on the repelling force before them. Oh, so it's over? He looked forward upon noticing that they were cruising through space. Taking note of the surroundings, he spotted familiar orbital bodies that came into view when they left the dead man zone over 2 weeks ago. From the time and date Gustav could see the spacecraft displaying, it seemed like they had gone back once again. What do you mean, oh, it's over? I asked, how long will it take us to reach our destination? Rhea questioned with a look of bafflement. Eldris was just as clueless. He felt like something was wrong. You okay? He inquired. Yeah, I'm fine. It looks like you guys don't remember. That's a good sign, Gustav stated with a look of relief. Remember what? Rhea and Eldris took a brief glance at each other. They were starting to wonder if Gustav was cuckoo in the head. It's better that y'all don't know. At least Epheve won't be able to give chase anymore. Gustav smiled while the ancient hourglass appeared before him. Floating atop the ancient hourglass was the crimson strand of root, like hair, which was bathed in a golden glow. Gustav had made use of the ancient hourglass energy to prevent the hair from being stripped away by the correction in time. Since the loop was shattered, it meant Gustav wouldn't have encountered Epheve and successfully stolen the hair. So, originally, the hair would have returned to Epheve, and he would still be capable of hunting them even after shattering the loop. Fortunately, the energy from the ancient hourglass prevented this. Eldris and Rhea both stared at Gustav, still utterly confused about how they went from talking about their destination to whatever he was referencing. I still remember, though, Endrick chimed in from the side. Time candidate, of course, Gustav voiced in understanding. It wasn't the first time Endrick was retaining his memory after a time reconfiguration. You guys better fill us in, Rhea stated in defiance. Well, it might be better for you two to know about it anyways, just in case Endrick decided to be the one to narrate the endeavors to them. Gustav focused on steering the spacecraft forward and taking unprecedented paths so as not to accidentally bump into Epheve again. They had successfully gotten away from him, but to make sure things stayed that way, they needed to avoid spots that they initially traveled through. In another part of space, Epheve floated while his hair grew in length. Some parts of it became much thicker than before and spread out like branches. In a few moments, A finger-sized green fruit with circular top and base grew out of the peak. It exuded a mythical glow as the time surrounding it sped up. The fruit ripened in just a few seconds, and Epheve reached up to pluck it with his incredibly slender fingers. He placed the fruit at his neck region, and a circular hole suddenly opened up to consume it. His neck emitted a glow, which followed down into his belly from the shimmer of the fruit. Suddenly, Epheve's body began to morph. The serene beauty of the hare's crimson branches becomes more pronounced, their edges sharpening, their movements becoming more deliberate and ominous. The branches twist and coil, transforming into a writhing mass that exudes a sinister aura. The transformation is not just visual but palpable, as a wave of energy bursts forth from Epheve, rippling through the surrounding space, distorting the very fabric of reality. As the Epheve undergoes some type of metamorphosis, his form grows exponentially, expanding into something far more sinister and immensely powerful. The once serene and beautiful branches now resemble the tendrils of some cosmic horror, each movement synchronized with the pulsing of dark energy that now emanates from his core. The crimson hue deepens to a blood-like shade, imbuing Epheve with an aura of malevolence that chills the soul. The faceless nature of Epheve becomes even more pronounced, as if its lack of features is a void that draws in all hope, all light. Its form, now a monument to dread, looms in the void of space, a harbinger of an unfathomable darkness. The transformation was completed, and where once floated a creature of mysterious beauty, now stands a being of unparalleled power and sinister intent. I may not know where you are, but I know where you are going. Epheve's dreadful voice resonates deeply despite being in space as he suddenly vanishes. 10 days later, in an unknown location, Gustav's spacecraft slices through the vacuum of space. They happen to be nearing their destination at this point, and watched out for unexpectancies. As the spacecraft further nears their destination, the group notices a shift in the behavior of space itself. Particles that once drifted lazily now veer away in an unseen current, as if repelled by an invisible force. Stars that should twinkle in the distance seem to skirt around an unseen boundary, leaving a void that stares back at them like an unblinking eye. The closer the spacecraft gets, the more pronounced the repulsion becomes, until it reaches a threshold where space itself seems to fold, creating a barrier that no physical object can penetrate. Why have we stopped? Are we there already? Rhea questioned. It's not by the choice. The engines are still running, but it's having difficulty moving any further, Gustav answered. We are being repelled. Eldris stood to his feet and noticed that it took a lot of energy to move forward despite being within the spacecraft. Chapter 1470. Let her go. Do not unlock. With a breath that felt like it could be his last, he took a step forward. The boots glow brightly, a beacon in the darkness, and in an instant, Gustav vanishes from sight. Gustav reappears light minutes away from his initial location and finds himself standing before the dark planet. He turns back, shooting a glance into the distance where the repellent force existed that now separates him from the others. He activated the comm link, and his voice was transmitted straight into their ears. I'm here. The boots worked. I've crossed in, and no longer feel the repellent force. Eldris' voice comes through, a blend of relief and excitement. Great. Do you still see the planets? Gustav's gaze swept over the desolate landscape. Yet it's in an even worse state than I expected. Outside the repelling perimeter, Endrick, Eldris, and Rhea nodded in understanding. Will you be able to take us with you? Enfik inquired. It is really difficult to control. I feel like one misstep would cost a lot, Gustav said internally. Maybe you shouldn't then. The system responded in his head. Nah, I have to. If I could split myself in two, I wouldn't need them, but I can't, Gustav answered while turning around. You made use of your body weight to balance the movement and control the void stepper to an extent. Take them one after the other. So it doesn't offset that balance by much, the system suggested. Sure. Hold on, I'm coming back for each of you. Prepare yourselves, he announced to the others with resolve that brooks no argument. Gustav proceeds to take a step forward, appearing before the others in an instant. The control over the void stepper's power requires intense concentration, a balancing act between his will and the ancient sacred item capricious energy. He begins to take them in, one after the other. With each journey back, Gustav feels the boots' power testing his limits, as if challenging his right to wield their might. First, he reaches for Eldris, his calm demeanor belying the anticipation of the unknown that awaits. Gustav extends his hand, and as their fingers touch, a surge of energy envelopes them. With a step forward, they traverse the perimeter of the repellent force yielding to the void stepper's ancient command. Eldris' breath catches at the sight that greets him. The dark planet, a vista of ruins and desolation, yet undeniably beautiful in its starkness. Incredible, he whispers, his voice a mix of awe and trepidation. Next, Gustav returns for Endrik as they step through the perimeter together. Endrik's mind races with questions and hypotheses about the barrier's origins. Lastly, Gustav brings Rhea across the barrier. The strength emanating from Rhea is comforting, a steadfast presence in the face of the uncertainty that lies ahead. As they set foot on the dark planet, Rhea clenches his fists, ready for whatever challenges they may face. This was pretty much the last step standing between them and the rescue of their friends, together again. The four stand on the brink of exploration, their mission clear yet daunting. The exit point. The exit point was the precise location where the mundane one told them to perform the ritual for opening the rifts. He had given them details of how the place looked and how to reach there. The planet, however, is not without its dangers. They've been warned of the vanishing wind, an eerie phenomenon that sweeps across the surface unseen. Contact with this wind can displace any living being to an unknown location, a risk that adds a layer of peril to their journey. We need to be vigilant. The vanishing wind is invisible, unpredictable. Stick close and watch each other's backs, Gustav instructs, his leadership unquestioned. Using their natural speed to navigate the surroundings might prove more dangerous, so setting it aside was paramount. They proceed with caution, their senses heightened to the subtlest of cues. The planet's surface is a labyrinth of ruins, each step revealing that a civilization once thrived here. The silence is profound, broken only by the crunch of their boots on the desiccated soil. Hours pass as they navigate through the ruins, the sense of desolation deepening with every step. Despite the dangers, there's a beauty in the desolation, a reminder of the planet's vibrant past and the fleeting nature of existence. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, they arrive at a vast clearing. In its center stands an ancient structure, its architecture defying the ravages of time. This is the exit point, its presence almost mystical in the desolate surroundings. The monolithic structure was proof that they were in the right place, which meant that the time had finally arrived. "Are you guys ready?" Gustav asked them. "I didn't come all this way to back down now," Rhea voiced in response. "We're rescuing them both, and nothing can stop us," Eldris added with a tone of seriousness. Endrik only nodded in response, but one could see the chilling expression on his face. He rubbed the bracelet on his right wrist, causing it to emit a mild gleam. "I need all the help I can get on this," he said internally. "Endrik, the items," Gustav called out to him. Endrik, nodding, rummages through his personal storage space with a practiced ease, producing a collection of items that would seem bizarre to any onlooker, but are essential to their task. Among these are the horns of an unknown beast, curling into the air with a malevolent grace, the heart of a mixed blood, still and silent, and an assortment of personal items including a piece of clothing and a comb. In a bit, they were floating before the endless void of space, ready to take on the repelling force before them. Gustav, with his dirty blonde hair framing a visage marked by determination, gazes out into the void, his mind racing with strategies and possibilities. Beside him, Endrick flexes his fingers, the air around them shimmering slightly as he prepares to wield his telekinesis. Ealdris opens his eyes, reflecting the vastness of space, stands calm and composed. Rhea, muscles tensed and energy crackling at his fingertips, draws upon the distant power of a star. No one knew he was capable of this initially, but now wasn't the time to question him. Their mission is clear: breach the repellent force that stands between them and the dark, desiccated planet hidden at the center of the universe. A planet visible only to Gustav at this moment. Endrick flies forward first, and with a deep breath, extends his hands. The space before them twists under the force of his telekinesis. Invisible strands of energy weave together, forming a lattice aimed at piercing the barrier. Yet, despite his efforts and the raw power at his command, the barrier remained. Endrick even tried letting his telekinesis go through the repelling force, but it was still the same result. It's like pushing against the fabric of the universe itself, Endrick said, frustration lacing his voice. There's no giving, no breaking point. Next, Rhea channels the energy he's drawn from the distant star, his body aglow with a fierce, incandescent light. With a roar that echoes through the vacuum of space, he launches himself forward, his fist aimed at the center. Even before he could make contact, the repelling force was already slowing him down. However, the strike was still immensely powerful. The impact sends ripples through space, a spectacle of light and energy that would awe any onlooker. Yet there was no breach in the repelling force. Ealdris transforms their surroundings into a colorless void. In this altered state, he attempts to weaken the repelling force or render it null. But as his powers reach out, they find no purchase, the repelling force existing beyond the reach of altercation. Ealdris shakes his head in defeat. The others understood at this moment that abilities weren't working on the surroundings, but they still needed to keep trying. Hours pass as they regroup and reconsider, their powers unable to find a weakness in the repelling force. Gustav gazes into the distance while multiple different options run through his mind. At this moment, he makes a conscious decision. From his storage space, he retrieves a golden and green boots, their appearance ancient, yet imbued with a power that feels alive, almost conscious. The Void Stepper, an artifact said to defy the limitations of movement and travel. What are those? Rhea asks, curiosity piqued by the boots' unmistakable aura. An old legend, Endrick replied while turning to stare at Gustav, who was strapping the boots onto his feet. They're said to step through the void itself, to travel where one wishes without regard for barriers or distances. He added. A silence falls over the group, a mixture of skepticism and hope as Gustav stands ready. Are you sure? Endrick asked Gustav. You're asking if I am sure about taking a step forward and finding myself within the epicenter instead of 3 galaxies away with half my body disintegrated? Nah, am not, Gustav answered with a poker face as opposed to his concern. Don't worry. I'll try not to overdo it, Gustav added before they could speak. Chapter 1470. One enters the anomaly, yet we cannot ignore the signs, counters Lumina, a member whose wisdom is often sought in matters of the arcane. The celestial alignments speak of a truth we must acknowledge. The stars do not lie, and their message is clear. We face a threat that could unravel the very essence of Orion. It is much better to take it seriously than end up like the Oasis. The council descends into debate, with voices rising and falling like the tides. Some members dismiss the phenomenon as an unfounded basis for panic, arguing that their advanced knowledge and capabilities can withstand any challenge. Others, however, sense the weight of the prophecy and fear that dismissing it could lead to their downfall. As the discussions reach an impasse, the Archon raises a hand for silence. It is clear that we stand divided on this matter, they state, their voice calm but firm. However, we must act for the welfare of our people and our planet. There is one among us, a being of unparalleled insight and power, who can traverse the boundaries of our knowledge and seek the truth. Heads nod in agreement, the tension in the room easing at the mention of this revered figure. We speak of the Crackle, the Archon continues. Let us call upon them to investigate this disturbing phenomenon. Only then can we truly understand the nature of the threat and decide our course of action. The council members rise, their wings unfurling in a display of unity and resolve. In the unfathomable reaches of a dimension far beyond the confines of human understanding, there lies an expanse where the fabric of reality twists into configurations impossible to grasp. This realm, shrouded in impenetrable darkness, defies the very notions of space and time. It is a place where time does not flow, standing still in a perpetual now that stretches into infinity. The concept of distance here is equally elusive. Locations seem both infinitely far and unsettlingly close, creating an overwhelming sense of disorientation. The structure of this higher dimension exists in a state that can only be described as roundabout and yet hollow. It's as if the very essence of being is both condensed into a single point and dispersed across an endless void. The darkness that envelopes everything is not merely the absence of light, but a palpable entity that seems to consume any semblance of warmth or comfort. It whispers of forgotten ages and lost existences, filling the atmosphere with an eerie sense of ancientness and otherworldliness. Amidst this indescribable setting, two figures emerge, their presence an anomaly in the timeless expanse, one with dirty blonde hair, and the other with hair as dark as the void around them. They stand as stark contrasts not only to each other, but to the very fabric of the dimension itself. Their arrival is silent, unnoticed by the unseen forces that dwell within the darkness, yet it is a bold defiance of the natural order of this place. The vicinity ahead of them, if one could even call it that, in a place devoid of physical landmarks, appears as a fluctuating mirage. It is an area where the dense darkness seems to swirl with a purpose, hiding secrets that have never been witnessed by mortal eyes. Endrick lays out the items, forming a perimeter around a drawn runic circle. The runes, etched into the ground with a precision that speaks of ancient knowledge, seem to dance in the fading light, awaiting infusion of energy to awaken them from their slumber. They all step forward as Gustav directs them to stand at particular positions. Gustav and Eldris stand at opposite ends of the circle, their hands extended as they gathered energy that permeates this ancient. Rhea and Endrick move around the perimeter, ensuring each item resonates with the energy being channeled. As the ritual progresses, the air around them becomes charged, the boundary between the physical and the ethereal blurring. The runes start to glow, a soft light at first, growing in intensity with each passing moment until the circle becomes a beacon of pulsating energy. Endrick! Now, Gustav announces, his voice steady, a counterpoint to the storm of energy that rages around them. Endrick's forehead emits a bright green glow at this moment, causing the energy of the time candidate to spread across the vicinity. He currently wasn't making use of his telekinesis. Only Husarius was at work. The energy around them peaks, a crescendo of light and power that envelopes the group, the ancient items, and the runic circle in a dome of radiant energy. The heart of the mixed blood pulses once, a beat that resonates through the ground and into the very fabric of the universe. And then, as suddenly as it began, the energy recedes, the light dimming until only the glow of the runes remains. Thrigs, a violent ripping sound, suddenly resonates across the surroundings, and in the next moment, two rifts start to materialize, one on each side of the monolith. The rifts continuously extend, till they become large enough to form a passageway. Gustav, opening his eyes, looks around at his companions in the intensity of the moment. "We've done it. It is time to rescue them," Ealdris voiced with a tone of seriousness. Rhea gulped saliva as this moment had been long anticipated. "That one should lead to Falco, while this one leads to Angie." Gustav pointed at the one directly perpendicular to his location. "Which one do you want to take?" Endric asked. This was a difficult question Gustav hadn't answered in weeks. He always said he would cross that bridge when he got here, and now they had finally gotten here, and yet he hesitated. "I don't know what Falco might have become, so despite this being a rescue, he is a threat. There should be lesser complications with Angie, so I should let them handle bringing her back instead of myself." "It'll take on the bigger threat, so as not to jeopardize their safety." Gustav put the whole situation into retrospective view and made a conscious decision. "Are you sure about that?" The system inquired internally. "It's the best choice. Safer option for them," Gustav answered. The system bothered him no more afterwards, and Gustav decided to make his decision known. "It'll leave getting Angie back into the hands of you two." He pointed at Endric and Ealdris. He believed that with their capabilities they would be able to handle that much. "Rhea, you're with me," Gustav said while moving towards the left. "All right." Endric nodded before heading towards the right. "Use the cloaking tool and try as much as possible not to attract any presence. The rift will only be open for 3 hours. Afterwards, anyone still within will be stuck in the other dimension forever," Gustav warned them with a tone of caution. "Then, let us not waste another moment." Ealdris peered forward in determination. Together, they stepped forward, leaving the ancient structure and the activated runic circle behind. The path before them is uncharted, a journey into that promises imminent danger and destruction, but yet they remain unfettered. In the far reaches of the cosmos, nestled within a constellation seldom gazed upon by human eyes, lies a planet unlike any other. This world, known to its inhabitants as Orion, is a marvel of natural beauty and ethereal landscapes. Its sky, a canvas of vibrant hues, reflects the diverse and rich life forms that call Orion home. Among these beings are the ethereals, a race distinguished by their luminous halo-like rings that float gracefully above their skulls and magnificent wings that unfurl with the colors of the dawn. The ethereals reside in a society governed by wisdom, harmony, and the pursuit of enlightenment. High-ranking members of this society often gather in a council held in a location as breathtaking as their appearance, a floating citadel of light and crystal, suspended in the sky by ancient power known only to them. It is within this citadel that unfolds a council meeting unlike any before. As the meeting commences, the chamber is filled with the soft glow of the ethereal's halos, casting ethereal shadows on the walls. The council members, each representing different facets of ethereal society, are seated in a circle, their wings gently folded behind them. At the head of the circle sits the Archon, a figure of noble stature, whose halo shines with a brilliance that signifies their leadership. Esteemed members of the council, the Archon begins, their voice echoing softly in the crystalline chamber. "We are gathered here to discuss a matter of grave concern. Reports have emerged from the edges of our solar system of a phenomenon that disturbs the very fabric of our reality. Whispers of an omen of destruction plague our people, stirring unrest and fear. A murmur of concern spreads among the council members, their halos flickering with unease. "Surely we cannot lend credence to mere superstitions," argues Sraffel, a council member known for their rational mind and keen insights. "Our ancestors have long taught us to seek explanations in the stars, not in the shadows of fear." Chapter 1472, Don't Ruin It, author's note. Unedited chapter now is not the time to be uncertain. Either you do it right now or we're toast, he stated with a tone of urgency. This slap seemed to work as a wake-up call for Falco as he suddenly reclined his face while energy began to gather around him. "Find somewhere to hide," he suggested. Rhea and Gustav immediately distanced themselves from him and hid behind one of the massive pieces of dark rock in the distance. The air around them vibrates with a raw, unfathomable energy. Falco's eyes blaze with a fierce dark flames, and the spiky crown above his head flares with an intensity that outshines the eerie glow of the chains. He lets out a roar, a sound that carries the weight of captivity and the fury of a force long restrained. The power that ripples forth from him is not just immense. It's primordial, a fundamental force that this dimension had sought to bind but never truly tamed. In an instant, the restraints that coil around him, the sentient chains that leech his power, begin to shatter. The runes that once glowed with an ominous light start to dim, their hold weakening. One by one, the chains break, disintegrating into dust that is swept away by the shockwave of energy released. The massive rocks to which they were anchored tremble and crack, the very foundation of this realm shaking under the unleashed might. The ripple of power sweeps across the entirety of the dimension, causing the oppressive darkness to recoil and the whispering shadows to silence. It was like the darkness within this dimension was bending to his might and will within the desiccated and dark planet. The rift on the left side of the monolith suddenly thrummed, and out of it appeared a trio. Gustav and Rhea had returned with none other than Falco. Although he looked much different than normal, they had achieved their objective within the necessary time frame. Falco falls to his knees a moment later, causing the both of them to swiftly move to help him up. "Don't worry, I'm fine. It's just a regular occurrence since I transitioned," Falco muttered as his body vibrated for a bit. "You sure you're going to be fine?" Gustav inquired. "Honestly, I feel you guys would have been better off leaving me in there. Now, I pose a danger to everyone on this plane." Falco shook his head in worry. "Whatever happens, we'll figure it out." Gustav placed a hand on his shoulder with a look of determination. Falco wanted to share in his enthusiasm, but he was still very bothered. "Why haven't they returned yet?" Rhea voiced from the other end. The aim of these two figures seemed to be the infiltration of this zone, driven by motives known only to themselves. The sensation of being in this dimension was nothing short of overwhelming. The absence of time renders every moment eternal, every second a lifetime of experience. The eerie silence is broken only by the sound of their own movements, which seem muffled and distant in the dense atmosphere. The air is thick with an unnameable essence, making every breath an effort, and every step a venture into the unknown. Web-like threads spread with every single movement, causing their faces to twist with worry. As they advance, the reality around them seems to react, shifting and morphing in ways that challenge comprehension. Shapes that cannot be shapes flicker in the periphery of their vision, and sounds that cannot be sounds echo through the void. It feels as though the dimension itself is both aware and unaware of their presence. Emerging from the swirling vortex of darkness, Gustav and Falco find themselves within a realm that defies logic. They are surrounded by gargantuan rocky structures, each floating in the void, yet connected by chains longer and more massive than any skyscraper conceived by human imagination. These chains, forged from an unknown material, shimmer with an ethereal light, casting eerie shadows that dance across the void. The darkness here is alive, pulsating with a malevolent energy that seems to watch and whisper. As they cautiously navigate this surreal landscape, their eyes are drawn to a distant figure. This being, humanoid, yet distinctly otherworldly, stands in stark contrast against the oppressive darkness. A massive, dark wing extends from its left side, unfurling into the void, with a regal yet ominous presence. Above its head, a spiky crown pulses with power so intense it distorts the air around it. Drawing closer, they observe the being's inhumane characteristics: eyes that glow with an internal fire, skin etched with glowing runes of ancient power, and limbs that blend the elegance of a deity with the ferocity of a creature born from darkness. Most strikingly, the being is bound by restraints that appear almost sentient, coiling around its form and anchoring it to the surrounding floating rocks. Despite the skin of this being looking like tar, Gustav's eyes squinted in suspicion. They soon arrived in clear view of the being, who seemed to be struggling with his eyes closed, occasionally wriggling and writhing in pain, not visible to the naked eyes. As they drew closer, they realized that this being indeed bears facial similarities with their friend. "Falco," Gustav whispered. The realization hits them with a mix of relief and urgency. He looks very different." Ria gazed at the part of his face that elongated into an upside-down V structure. "Yes, but why is he restrained?" Gustav's gaze locked on the coils that bound Falco in place. "If his father is truly who I think he is, why would he bind his son?" Gustav's concern grew as he observed the surroundings. "Can you hear us?" calls out to Ria, his voice cutting through the oppressive silence. The bound being's eyes flickered opened at this moment. His pupils dilated as the coils suddenly thrummed with unprecedented energy. "Eh-ha-ha!" The being screamed in excruciating pain as a throng of darkness burst forth. Bang! Bang! Gustav and Ria were instantly blasted backwards with intensity. The dimension shimmered and pulsated from the sudden discharge, spreading to every nook and cranny, causing the other beings within to worry. Gustav managed to put a protective layer of energy around himself and Ria before they got hit, but even at that, they were both bleeding from their orifices. Gustav's ears were ringing so badly that it affected even his vision. His body began to slowly regenerate, but he couldn't imagine just how much it would have affected Ria, since even he was hit this badly. "Gus! Gus!" HS could faintly hear his name being called, but it wasn't coming from Ria, who was beside him. The bound being's eyes flicker with recognition, and a voice, deep and resonant, yet strained by confinement, fills their surroundings. "Gus, Gustav, you came for me. Falco, is it really you?" Gustav wiped the blood off his face while drawing closer. The bound being nods in response. Don't call me any closer. I don't want to hurt you." His voice distorted multiple times as he spoke. His disillusioned look slowly rescinded as he seemed to have completely gained consciousness. "We're getting you out of here," Gustav declares, his resolve steeling. The moment Gustav touches one of the coils, his hand turned thin and fleshy like life was being sapped from it. He quickly retreats. "Just tell us how to get rid, or these restraints." Falco's gaze shifts to the chains and then back to them. These are not mere physical bindings. They are forged from the essence of this dimension, a manifestation of its will to contain what it cannot control. Ria seemed to be coming around at this point. He and Gustav exchange a determined glance, understanding the gravity of their task. They must not only contend with the physical act of freeing their friend, but also engage in a battle against the very essence of the dimension. "I could use Kohilia, but that would pretty much ruin our cloak. He will be aware of our presence if I do that." As Gustav contemplates their next move, the air around them begins to thicken, and the whispers in the dark grow louder, more menacing. It is clear that something or someone was coming. You two need to leave. They always come to inspect me after a surge. Go. Falco yelled with a look of urgency. We are not leaving you here. You are coming with us. Rhea tried to touch the restraints with rocks wrapping around hands, and they all disintegrated upon contact. Listen, Falco, it took a lot to get here. After everything we have done to reach this point, giving up isn't an option. These restraints are trying to hold back your power, right? But have you really tried to free yourself from them? Gustav's question caused a hint of worry to appear on Falco's face. Imma needs you to unleash everything you've got so we can get out of here, Gustav urges Falco, while scanning the surroundings. I don't think that is a good idea. Falco shakes his head from side to side. Pa! Gustav landed a slap on Falco's face and pulled his head closer. Chapter 1473, Mesothelioma do not unlock. I was trying to get a Feeve off our back. That's the name of the faceless one after us, or specifically, after me, Gustav clarified. If Feeve, that's a weird name, Rhea stated bluntly. You should hear the name of the cosmic superior faceless one. Gustav wondered what Rhea would call that if he knew of it. I tried to get him to help us take a Feeve off our case, Gustav added. Any luck with that? Eldris inquired. Knob. He said he can't do that. It isn't the way of the faceless, whatever that means, Gustav responded. Bummer, Rhea mumbled. He mentioned something else. Gustav paused for a bit with a disturbed expression. He said the reason a Feeve keeps getting to us is because he has a piece of his hair, Gustav revealed. What does his hair have to do with this? Rhea questioned. Cosmic superiority beings are linked, so he uses the cosmic strand to link us and locates us each time, Gustav explained. Gustav watched as shock plastered all over Rhea and Eldris' faces after his revelation. Is there any way we can get it from him? Eldris asked. Even if we did, we would still have this loop problem. Gustav shook his head softly. Isn't Endrick taking care of that at the moment? Rhea said while looking around. There is no guarantee that he will find it. A plan began formulating in Gustav's head immediately after he spoke. I haven't. Before Gustav could complete his sentence, space pulsated rhythmically up ahead. They all turned to stare in the northeast direction in horror. He's here, Eldris stated. Endrick, Gustav yelled and vanished. Fulham, he reappeared atop the spacecraft and reached out to grab Endrick, who was floating while emitting a powerful green glow from his figure. Earth, within a broad space, lay an exemplar of sophistication and high-class design. Its expansive dimensions were accentuated by the minimalist yet opulent decor, where the interplay of natural light and shadows cast a serene ambience conducive to focused deliberation. The room was encased in panels of dark, rich mahogany, their polished surfaces reflecting the subdued lighting from the elegant, recessed ceiling fixtures, creating an atmosphere of warmth and exclusivity. At the heart of the boardroom lay a grand, elongated table, its surface a flawless expanse of gleaming, jet-black marble. There was no question that the imposing centerpiece commanded respect, its sleek, reflective top mirroring the solemn expressions of those seated around it. Around the table, figures clad in authoritative uniforms convened, their attire a testament to their positions of power within the MBO. Medals and insignias, symbols of achievements and rank, glinted under the soft lighting, adding a touch of solemnity and pride to the gathering. What is this talk about sending more of our officers to the Alliance? The officer backing the ceiling-high window that offered a breathtaking view of the city's skyline, voiced in bafflement. It was requested by the Alliance to capture the fugitive Gustav Crimson, General Chell answered from the other end. They have enough forces. It is unwise for us to give more. Another general voiced his opinion. Other planets agreed. So it would be odd if we decided not to, General Chell responded. Yes, capturing Gustav Crimson should be the #1 priority. Another officer agreed, with General Chell. With all due respect, we have already put a lot of resources into capturing Gustav Crimson. At this point, we are starting to neglect that there are bigger issues to take care of right here on our planet and not out there in the stars, Commander Xanatus, who was also present, stated with a respectful yet assertive tone. We have enough forces to handle whatever is on the ground just as much as what is in the sky, General Chell responded. Not according to recent data. Another officer shook their head while putting up a bunch of holographic statistics. The meeting seemed to be split between two sides. One side was with General Chell, while the other side disagreed with him. Grand Commander Cheyenne, what is your take on this? Commander Xanatus said to an aged-looking man with a diamond shard in his forehead, enough with the bickering. The Grand Commanders will decide on this later. For now, this meeting is adjourned, Grand Commander Cheyenne stated with an authoritative tone. Minutes after the meeting came to an end, General Chell approached Grand Commander Cheyenne. We need to make a move now, or we are going to lose Gustav to the Draconids, he stated. What do you mean by that? Grand Commander Cheyenne inquired with a suspicious expression. They employed a very powerful entity to capture him, who, amidst the serenity of space, where stars twinkled like distant lighthouses guiding the wanderers of the cosmos, a spacecraft, its design unconventional with a distinct pentagon shape, could be spotted floating in place. Atop this vessel were two remarkable-looking figures. The first figure, an individual with curly black hair, floated slightly above the vessel. On his forehead, a green glowing that pulsed with an ethereal light, marking him as someone of significant power and mystique. Around him, an aura of formidable energy emanated, pushing against the very fabric of space, distorting the area with an invisible force. His eyes were focused, reflecting a resolve that was both calming and intimidating. Beside him, the second figure, with dirty blonde hair, exuded a different kind of significance. The individual carried a weight in their demeanor, a target of unimaginable value. It was that figure that beckoned the extraordinary, drawing forth the presence of divinity. Without warning, the space before the spacecraft distorted, a rippling effect that heralded the arrival of the entity with crimson, tree-like hair. It materialized with silent grace, floating before the vessel, its hair billowing in an unseen cosmic wind. The entity's appearance was mesmerizing, its hair glowing with a deep, rich hue that contrasted starkly against the backdrop of space. The moment of confrontation was electric, charged with an unseen tension that gripped the void. Endrick's eyes remained closed, almost like he was lost in a trance. Gustav reached out to touch him, but the energy that emanated from Endrick's figure repelled his hand. With the Epheve right before him, Gustav decided to make a last-minute decision. In a bold move, he launched himself into the vacuum of space, propelling away from the spacecraft in the opposite direction. His movement was swift, a desperate bid to draw the crimson-haired being away, sacrificing his safety since he seemed to be headed back for the dead man zone. The faceless one stood in place for a bit, seemingly confounded, but soon his gaze shifted, locking onto the fleeing figure with an intensity that belied its serene appearance. With a fluid motion, it gave chase, moving through space with an ease that defied physics. Ultimate combination has been activated. Gustav's figure morphed as he wove through asteroids and debris, pushing his limits in a desperate bid to outrun the faceless one. Even though he knew it was impossible, he aimed to get Epheve as far away from the spacecraft as possible, so the others could get out of there, and the only chance he felt he had at achieving this was by heading back to the dead man zone that made it impossible for any being of matter to pass through. Fwish, they both transcend unimaginable speed as Epheve closes in on him. Meanwhile, back on the spacecraft, Endrick suddenly opened his eyes. I found the focal point, he voiced before blinking. Twiwe, he reappeared within the spacecraft that was already veering forward with Eldris taking charge. "Where is Gustav?" Endrick inquired with a slightly befuddled look. "We need to get out of here now, or he won't be safe," Eldris stated before powering up the hyperjump. Endrick's face lit up in realization as the recent events played out in his head. "Husarius, why didn't you tell me?" he yelled out. Breaking concentration would have prevented us from finding the focal point. Husarius answered without an ounce of remorse while the spacecraft turned into a line that streaked forward with intensity. On the outside, Gustav closed in on a massive net wriggling with violent throngs of energy. "I know what you are planning. I won't let you." The voice of the faceless one thrummed across space as it suddenly accelerated. Fusum, before Gustav could reach the net, Efive reached him. Gustav tried to evade, but Efive caught him by the neck and held him in place as Gustav struggled powerlessly. "Now I have you." His voice reached Gustav's hearing once more, even though he wasn't speaking. "Do you?" A smirk suddenly appeared on Gustav's face as he stared at a countdown. 1. A burst of sky-blue light suddenly emanated from his wrist, completely consuming his figure. Gustav vanished in the next moment, causing Efive's hand to close in on nothing. "No!" Although Efive was faceless, one could sense the frustration in his voice as infuriating energy spread forth from his being. "You're tuning into the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories